Welcome back to the Belonging Place, where we talk about community and connection and belonging. And I'm really excited to have my friend, Courtney Merrill, Moffat.
Either way. I like to confuse
on
people
the
with my
podcast
name.
with me. We'll talk a little bit about that. I like to start with our meet cute.
Okay.
And do you know our meet cute? I like to ask people because I don't remember mine. I can maybe guess. But
right?
Was it La Europa?
I think so.
Oh, it is La Europa.
Yeah, you were working as like a line staff, what we could call it.
Direct care staff.
Residential treatment program.
And what was your role there?
At that time, I was probably the clinical director.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what's wild about this? I have matched our time.
Oh.
Because I wasn't a therapist at that time. I was just going to school and I had graduated and was doing seminary. I was teaching seminary and I was also working at La Europa.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I had graduated with a writing degree. So it wasn't in, I didn't even do social work undergrad. Did you know that? Yeah. So I just happened to fall into direct care, which then changed my whole life. But I was at La Europa, but I thought that our meet cute, I thought what you were going to say was down in Arizona when we were involved in, I was in the Spire Choir and you were the narrator for the shows with Rob Gardner, but we had already met.
Well, no, maybe not. Well, I don't know. Cause when was that?
Maybe. So I did La Europa before I moved down to Arizona. Okay. Arizona was when I was in grad school.
So so we knew each other. We had met already
years before, because I did La Europa and then I moved to Boston. I lived in Boston for a couple of years. Then I came to Arizona. So this is why because I placed La Europa in my clinical lifeline, but it wasn't.
No.
In my clinical lifeline.
Well, and then I think that I connected you with Anasazi.
Oh, okay. So
I think that's what happened. Because maybe we ran into each other in Arizona and you were looking for a job and I was like,
I think you did connect me. Oh my gosh, this is wild.
Or was a reference or something.
You're the linchpin. Okay, so you did Anasazi when though?
I did Anasazi in right after grad school, so 2002 to 2005, 2004. Okay. Yeah,
I was looking. So in 2010 when I graduated, the economy and everything was crazy. Oh, and therapists, I don't remember this. There was no entry level therapist jobs because all the people that were in they all kind of filled those positions because there was no people that had been in the industry for years, right?
Yeah.
And so my friends that were in law school were selling pizza. This is what it was. Oh, yeah. I mean, it was so bad. And I don't know if it's so bad everywhere, but it was really bad in Arizona. And so I couldn't find a clinical job, but I didn't want to not be in the field. So I took a job at Devereaux, which is a lockdown facility.
Yeah. Okay.
And worked as line staff, even though I had graduated with my degree in being a therapist, because I just wanted to stay. And in that time, I was just desperate to find a job as a therapist. And you did. You were you know what, Kylee? This is crazy, Courtney, because Anasazi changed my life. And I, till this moment of you saying me, I just couldn't remember how I got connected to Anasazi. Yeah, thank you. I want to say thank you. That was the best, connection. You know how you have these moments, these turning points in your life where somebody's oh, you should maybe do this. Yeah. Because I met my best friend Hillary there, but I also being a wilderness therapist. I mean, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
Literally.
No, it'll change your life for sure.
And then the people that I met there and just the being introduced to Arbinger Institute and all of
the foundation and all the things. Yeah.
The foundation. And then the Forever Young Foundation, which is next door. Cool. Okay. So we have this connection and then we also have music connection and then La Europa. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We have lots of paths
crossing.
Okay. Some of those I remember. Some of those I didn't. I love this. Okay. I want you, for those people who may or may not know you that are listening, tell us a little bit about you. Give us your elevator pitch.
Okay. So I mostly grew up in Colorado.
Which I just learned today.
I know. Interestingly, I moved 16 times by the time I was 16. So a lot of those were kind of close around moves, but we lived in California for a couple of years when I was in middle school. And so I had to learn to adjust. So the idea of belonging is sort of interesting to me from that perspective too, of a kid trying to figure out where they belong in different places and different schools and things like that. And so, but I did go to one high school for 4 years, even though we moved 3 times during that time.
Okay.
But I had a great childhood and adolescence, and then I went to Purdue University in Indiana for my undergrad, which was super random.
I was like, tell me more about that, like that direction and why. And
so it was funny because I had grown up, my parents both went to BYU, met at BYU. I was born in Provo as a typical oldest child of 5 kids. Okay. And so BYU was the only school I even knew existed.
Right.
And I think times were different back then too. It wasn't, like as much in your face, I think. And in Colorado too, people went to CU or they went to CSU.
It was literally the same because I was in Portland.
Yeah.
Nobody knew about BYU.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe I'll go to BYU. Maybe I'll go to Portland State.
Yeah. That was it. Those were the options.
Yeah.
And I hadn't even occurred to me to think about anything else. And I think it was probably when I was a junior in high school. I had there's the Latin teacher at my high school who was my like homeroom teacher. And she was a quirky lady, but like so wonderful. And she asked me where I was thinking about going to school. I was like, I don't know, maybe BYU, and she just said, you could go somewhere else. Like there's a lot of schools out there. You're really smart and you're really capable.
Permission giving, right?
I was like, oh, like where? Like what?
Tell me more about this other places.
Yeah, there was no internet. Like you're reading, like it wasn't like you like where should I go to college?
We have to help the people understand that this wasn't like just Google whatever college does the degree that you want now.
Yeah,
right?
you'd like I don't know, sometimes you'd get things in the mail that would tell you about schools. I feel like that was starting to happen for me, that some of those were coming. And anyway, I had heard about this school called Northwestern. It was probably on a TV show or something.
Yes.
I don't know. And it sounded cool, and it was in Chicago. And so my mom and we were like, let's go on a college trip, And so we went to the Midwest, and we were going to go check out Northwestern. That was kind of the goal. And then there was this lady in our ward, and she had grown up in Lafayette, Indiana, which is where Purdue is, and her dad was a professor there, and he was the
Indiana,
branch president
of all the random places.
I know. So he was the branch president of the student branch there, and she said, well, as long as you're going out there, you should just drive down and check out Purdue.
This is the
and
wildest.
So we did. So we just made a plan and went down and toured the campus, and it was so beautiful in the fall, and it was just like so beautiful. The campus is all these beautiful brick buildings, and it just felt so like welcoming and warm and cool and all of the things. And I was like, this place is so cool. And so I just applied. I only applied there. I didn't even apply to BYU because I was like, if I apply there, I'll go there. I'll
get in.
I'll chicken out and go there because my friends are going there and because it's what I know. But I got in, I got a little scholarship, and I decided to go, and it was insane. I moved to Indiana. I didn't know anybody.
This is the beginning of this is so you. This is so Courtney. If I were to say one of the things that I love the most about you, Courtney, I mean, you're I feel like I want to say we're like equals, but you're just a little bit more like ahead in life and things and schooling that I would call you like more like somebody like mentor to look up to. Also, I just always am fighting just like, oh, we're colleagues, which we're both.
Yeah, we are.
But I want to say that like watching your life has just been so permission giving to just be your authentic self and just do your own thing and to be empowered to like do the thing that maybe nobody else is really doing. And also just on a side note, because I don't know if you call yourself or don't call yourself, like some a little bit of like this feminist side of you that's in kind of Christian culture that maybe likes that or doesn't like that or kind of fringes it. You've kind of like, I feel like walked this really healthy path about it, and I've been like, oh man, I just like there's more of us, that are just kind of doing the thing and making the balance and like living our lives, but also just like being adventurous and like, but like already from the beginning, you're like, I'm out here, I'm doing this thing.
I'm gonna go do this thing. It's really crazy. I cried like straight for the first 3 days. It was 111 degrees. I didn't have air conditioning in my dorm. I was like, what?
Let me ask you, was there something? Besides that you had these connections to Purdue and you fell in love with the campus, was there did you know what you wanted to study and did they do that well?
So this is another one of those things where it was like, well, I'm going to be a mom,
Okay, so this was, you were like, I'm going to mom it.
I wanted to be a mom, but I think I was like a budding feminist. And I was like, I want to be a mom, but I don't want to be a mom as young as my mom was. Okay. My mom had me when she was almost 21. And she, or maybe almost 20, anyway, she was really young. And
same, my mom.
And I was like, I think I'd like to be 22. At the time I
was like kids. 23 when I come home from my mission.
Yeah, totally. I'm like 22. I would like
so much more older.
Yeah, I'm gonna have 6 kids by the time I'm 30. That was the goal.
6 is okay because my family had 6, and then we had 7 and 8. I was like, oh, that's too many.
Yeah, 6 was the number that my best friend Barb had in her family.
Okay,
so we both had this plan.
Okay,
neither one of us did this plan. And anyway, that was what I wanted. And so I was looking for something that I could do where I could be a mom and be a professional. And so I was going to be a nurse.
Oh, okay.
So Purdue had a thing where I got right into the nursing school. So it wasn't, you still had to take the prereq kind of stuff. But like at BYU, you'd go for 2 years and then you would maybe get into the nursing school.
Yeah. Okay.
And so this was like my scholarship was in the nursing school. And so I was like right out of the gate in a bunch of science classes and stuff like that.
Which is kind of unique for the route you took.
I know.
Because I would say the STEM and the psychology, they're like not on the same paths.
And I liked that stuff, but this is like here's the funny story.
Yeah.
So 1995, 96, I'm in my freshman year in college, and we would all get together on Thursday nights to watch Thursday Night TV, which at that time was Friends and then something ER. Like that was we would like tune out for the middle things.
Yeah, got it.
And then we would watch ER, and I started to
Who
notice
wasn't? Everybody was watching ER.
Yeah,
come on, everybody.
And these tiny little dorm rooms, there'd be like 6 of us crammed in watching ER. And I noticed that like whenever anything gory would happen, I would have to look away. And I was like, maybe I shouldn't be a nurse.
For reals.
That was sort of like one of the turning points. And at the time I was taking, so in my sophomore year, my first semester of my sophomore year, I was taking another psychology class. So I had taken like a basic psychology class my freshman year and a sociology class my freshman year. And then I was taking more abnormal psych.
Got it.
My sophomore year. And I was like, this thing really sort of interests me. And at that point too, so now I'm a sophomore, I'm like, I'm not getting married when I'm, like that's nowhere near what's happening right now. I like school. I enjoy learning. And why would I not go to grad school? Like, so at this point
so sophomore year, you're like, I'm going to grad school.
Yes.
Okay.
And nursing had always been like, well, that's a 4-year thing. So I can be done by the time I'm 22. So I can start having kids, And so I was like, I'm not in a hurry. I feel like I want to explore and I want to leave my options open. So I majored in psychology, but I was like, maybe I'll go to law school. I was doing acting stuff. Like maybe I want to be an actress. Maybe I want to do, and I knew that like therapy was
my oyster.
A possibility. It was,
you did.
I knew it was a possibility.
There was an inkling.
Yes, but it wasn't, it was like, I'm interested in this stuff. I'm going to do psychology, but psychology is sort of a, like, I could still do a lot of things with that. So I switched my major and I graduated in 3.5 years. It was a really fast like major to get through. And I had already been kind of busting myself getting through all of it. And so then, and between my junior and senior year, I went to Washington, D.C. for the summer, and I somehow got connected with this congressman from Boulder, Colorado. My dad's law firm must have had connections to him. And so I got an internship. So I was an intern in Washington, D.C. In 1998, which was the summer of Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah.
So being an intern in Washington, D.C. was like, there was no shortage of jokes. Like you're like, but I loved it. I completely fell in love with DC. I loved being in that environment.
Yeah.
Everything about it. It was like, what am I doing? I'm moving to this place. I don't know anybody. And I, ended up roommates with a whole bunch of women who were older and single. And, but I just had the best summer and I loved it. And while I was there, I decided that I wanted to go on a mission. And so, and my family was like,
and give us around age, because
so
nowadays
I'm
the
21.
contextual girl missionaries are going at 19, right? But at that time, you actually couldn't go until you were 21.
You had to be 21. And so I turned 21 that summer, and I just had one more semester left of school. So I decided to put in my MISH papers and go when I was done with school.
Okay.
So, I got a little bit of resistance from people, like, because it was still so much, the culture was like, literally, this is a hilarious story. I live this.
I
bet you did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I bet you did.
Yeah.
So the little branch presidency there I was going to that church in West Lafayette, Indiana, and we got a new branch presidency, and so one of the men in the branch presidency was like, "Oh, I'd like to meet you. Like, come in and talk to me." So I go in to talk to him. He's like, "Tell me about you. Tell me about your life." And I'm telling him, I'm like, "Well, I'm putting in my mission papers," and he goes like this. "You know you're pretty, right?"
Can I tell you? I literally tell you my exact story?
Oh my gosh,
verbiage.
Yes.
I'm saying I'm gonna turn my papers in, and this person, ecclesiastic person, says, "You know that missions are for girls that are ugly,
oh my gosh,
or can't get married, right?" And I was appalled.
Yes, me too.
I was appalled.
Yeah.
I was like, I knew the common thought was that, but no, you're not sitting literally in front of me, saying that to me.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I said, this is what I said. I go, I mean, my mom says I am, but I don't know what that has to do with anything. And he goes, "Well, I mean, like, you could get married."
Oh,
and I was like, "Well, I'm not
hearts.
like, no, I'm not getting married. No, there's nobody that I want to marry right now."
But it's not a if or this or that. It's like, and.
No. Thank you. Yes. And so it just made me even more determined.
Yeah.
This is all my feminism budding, 100%.
Right? If ever you wanted to kick me into high gear.
Yeah. Just tell me I shouldn't. Just tell me I shouldn't do that because I'm a girl.
Yeah.
No.
I also had this, I don't know about you, but I also had this, very strong belief inside of me when people would say things like this, because the thought or the cultural thing at the time was like, you should get married, and if you go on a mission you might miss your chance to get married.
Oh, totally.
And I had this very strong spiritual belief that I was like, that's not how God is.
No,
he's not gonna punish me when I go on a mission and I'm becoming, building who I am, and I'm teaching the gospel. I always knew a mission was going to be more about me than it was going to be about anybody else. I had a working knowledge that whenever we do things in life, we get and give, and we're changing, and then whatever is spilling out of us is also happening too, right? So I knew I was going to go teach people the gospel, but I also knew I was going on my own journey, right? And I was like, God's not going to punish. He's not going to not let me get married to the person. I didn't really think about soulmates anyway, but I was like, there's plenty of fish in the sea.
Yes.
There's plenty of opportunities. My person's probably, I always thought I would date younger people and did. My guy's on a mission anyway.
Yeah.
He's not coming home for 2 years. So I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And yeah. And so I already pushed against this. If you don't if you go on the scarcity mentality, right?
Totally. Yeah, I was pushing against the scarcity mentality from a young age too.
Yeah.
Because it was like, well, there's something everywhere. And I think maybe because I had moved around so much too, that it was like, there's always more people, there's always more to learn, there's always more connection to make. And so I think that probably contributed.
I can't believe we both had this.
Yeah, that is so funny.
I think this had more common at that time.
It was. Yeah,
there was
because
a little
most
feeling.
of the girls in the MTC with me, the training center where we go, they had similar experiences too.
Yeah.
And we were still having those experiences when we were in the training center. People were still saying it to us when we were there.
And where did you get called?
To Chile, Santiago, Chile.
Okay, because I had this extra layer because I got called to the Mormon Battalion Visitor Center.
Oh, okay.
And there was this extra thing about that they put sister missionaries in visitor centers that can't do hard work.
Oh, that's funny because in my assessment of it was that they put sister missionaries in visitor centers who are really pretty. So I sent my ugliest picture in with my papers because I didn't want to go to a visitor center.
Because the only thing I didn't want to do on a mission was serve in a visitor center. I feel like it was a little bit of a glass doll.
Yeah.
Let me tell you how, you know. Okay, so I basically said to God, I'll go anywhere but that.
Oh.
And then I went on this 6-week back east trip with my family, and we went to all the American sites and church history sites. And I met some of the most amazing sister missionaries, and And they had these crazy awesome stories, right? Because they stayed stationary, but everybody came to them.
Yes.
And I was like, I didn't know this at the time because I didn't know I had ADHD, but this novelty idea was always like, that is kind of cool.
Yeah.
That, like, people just come to
coming
me.
to you. Yeah.
So I was softened, and by the time I was done with that trip, I was like, okay, I'm ready to say I'll go wherever you send me.
Oh my gosh.
And then, of course.
And then that happened.
I mean,
you're such a good storyteller.
My
Kylee.
mission story was so unique, though, because I only served 7 months in the Mormon battalion. And then I served an ASL mission the rest of my mission.
Oh, cool.
So I got everything. I got everything that I could possibly want. But the irony was, I just was like, do not put me in a visitor center.
But there's the scarcity mentality that comes back up too, right? That it's like, no, I'm not willing to do this thing. And it turns out that thing gave you all the things.
All the things.
But you wouldn't have had that if you were unwilling to do the thing that you thought, right?
And I literally opened my mission call and I was like, San Diego, which is like, because I'm not afraid to admit it, because even at the time, because I had cousins, like San Diego's a cool place, but I had cousins that lived there. So we'd been there many times. Yes. It was like vacation.
It wasn't novel
place. And it wasn't novel. And the Mormon battalion, and I was like, oh, you're really... I didn't say this to anybody. I was like, oh, you're really testing me. Yeah. You're testing that out. I said I'd do anything, and you're going to send me to San Diego. And, and who even is the Mormon battalion? The only thing I had ever... And this was also, by the way, I want to say contextually in the church, because I think more people maybe know about them now. But at that time, the only reference to the Mormon battalion was there was the church put out this movie called Legacy.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
And it was like at the visitor centers and stuff. And just this, and they kind of do this scene about the Mormon battalion guys leaving
the wives
on the trail.
Totally.
But like, this is it. This is the note of like the Mormon battalion. Yeah.
You're there.
But I'd say most people didn't know.
Yeah,
That's it. That's the reference. You didn't have. So I was about to go on like a church history mission.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which my brother had just died the year before. I was ready to go on the mission where I brought people the idea that like we have eternal families.
Yes. Yeah.
This was my thing.
Yeah.
So I was like, you're going to go put me, I mean, we're on a tangent, but I also served during September 11th.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
So I also served in San Diego when they stopped the planes and no one was coming down. And so I was in an empty Mormon battalion. Which is a whole other story. God knew exactly what he was doing, right? Like, I'm going to take away everything that you think is a mission and what you think is how you should show up. And I'm going to like give to you the opportunity to like do it differently.
Isn't that awesome? In hindsight.
Is that like your whole life?
Yeah. I mean, I think it happens. Like it does though, right?
Yeah.
Like everything we plan for is... I mean, I didn't get married when I was 22.
Yes.
I didn't do any of the things I thought I was going to do. And but I wouldn't trade it, you know, like
it's
worked out was
so
how it was
perfectly
supposed
picked
to be.
for you, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And if it wasn't perfectly picked for you, you figured it out. Like I want to say sometimes people are like, oh, that's perfect. I was like, I don't know that it was perfect. There's a lot of zigs and zags that I don't know that were so good for my growth, but I certainly learned how to zig and zag, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
And I learned where to put that and how to become resilient, I guess.
Yeah. And I think this is sort of like my world now is a lot about this and that it's like, it can be really hard and what's the other side of that statement? Because I think sometimes it's easy to get lost in one or the other. That's like, either I'm having a really hard time and these things are really challenging for me and I'm just going to live in all the hard emotions around that, or like I'm going to get over it and be okay anyway. Or the thing is going to go away and I'm going to be okay.
Right.
And it's not, we struggle with that idea that I can be in it, the hard stuff and experiencing it as hard stuff and also experience like growth and notice things that are positive and helping me in it. Yeah.
I'm going to come back to, we were going on your mission, but I'm going to say this because you're right here in this and one of my, everybody has sort of these like, I would just call them like Courtney moments or Courtneyisms. You know how you meet people in your life and even if they're your good friends, there's like these seared moments. Okay. One of my seared moments for you was I came to you speak a lot, right? Like, I don't remember. I couldn't even put it in context. I don't even know if it was like a church thing or a professional thing. It doesn't matter. But I showed up. I don't even think I knew what the context was. I just showed up because I was like, Courtney speaking. It's going to be good. Like, this is my truth. And you were very vulnerable and we're going to talk a little bit about this, but you basically said, like, I can be married and have a kid and be so happy. And maybe I never knew that I thought that I was going to have that. And because of this, which I'll let you talk about, because of this other thing that happened, I can also be like in like feel so much loss and so much grief. And you said it much more eloquently, but you were doing this dichotomy and you were talking about dichotomies.
Yeah.
And I knew this in my brain, right? I think my brain knew about dichotomies and my brain knew, but my heart needed so much permission to sit in the and I sat there and it just wrecked me in the best way. I was like, oh, okay. Because I have this living dichotomy where I just feel so grateful, so blessed, so have so much and don't have any of the things I want.
Yeah, right.
Like none.
Right.
Well, not none. None of the things that I thought and I still think are the things that will help me have the most growth, which is to get married and have kids, right? And I know that's not like I'm just saying that. That is like the plan of life. And the thing is that these people are our mirrors. These things are our growth edges. That you can't get them any other way. And I would look around and I'd be like, I have a house and I have a car and I have a job and I have friends and like, I'll never go hungry and I'll never not be loved. And like these essential things. Right. Yeah. And I would sort of berate myself with my gratitude because I would say like, you don't have any space to like, there are people who are blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
On the other side of that, which I was always afraid to do because I knew comparison was the thief of joy, there was this other side of me that there's like people that are having kids that shouldn't. And there are people that are getting married 3 times in the time I've gone on a date.
Yes.
Like what? And I just tried not to open that box because I was like, that is a tempting and a no-go-nowhere box. But I opened this box all the time. Oh, you should be so grateful. Anyway, I'm sitting in this and I was like, oh, they're just like, they can just be both open.
Yes.
Like, and if I can just like sit with this side of me that has unmet expectations and not ignore it and like, let it be a part of who I am and sort of even honor this place that it has and this lining, I think I'll be a better, fuller person. It was there. It was sitting in that room with you and sort of not just the idea of dichotomies, but the like lived experience of you holding this and of this that I was like, oh yeah, it's like we need permission, right?
Definitely. And I talk about it a lot about that idea. And every time I talk about it, people are like, I never thought about it. Yeah. And which sort of shocks me and doesn't because we all really struggle with that.
Yes.
And I think our church kind of encourages that struggle a little bit because there's an idea in our church that says you should be grateful. Just be grateful and everything will be okay. Like you're going to feel better if you just like count your blessings, right? And so
have more faith.
Yes. And so there we use the gratitude to beat ourselves up and to say these emotions aren't okay. And they're wrong and bad and they're not from God. And I don't believe that.
Yeah.
I believe all of the emotions are a part of our human experience and Jesus had all of those human emotions.
Yeah.
Right. And so if he had all of those emotions, they're not bad or wrong. In fact, they're a really important part of our human experience. And I don't believe that God wants us to shove those things down and say these emotions are wrong and bad. And these emotions, gratitude, joy, hope, all the things that we like put on things on our wall,
right?
You know, believe, joy, right? And you go in people's
none
houses,
of which are in my home, by the way.
I know. I just have a big old and sign. Like that's what's in my house.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that happens sometimes that we live in that. And so when I say that in church, and people are like, oh, it's okay for me to experience both of these things.
There's this other side too, to me, that like how exposing and how vulnerable can you just constantly be? You know, people would ask me like. I can sit for so long with the like loss of what I want to have before I have to sort of like sew that part up a little bit, right? Like it can't be hanging out all the time.
Yes.
And then I sort of have to be like, okay, and get myself busy building the kingdom is what I call it.
Yeah.
But then I have to unzip and I have to examine and I have to look because it's just like isn't a full lived life to just be like, and I'm doing all these things. Like, I think it's just like, you can be doing good things and they're distracting you from like your feels, right? Totally. And those are such teachers and they're so, I think the things that have brought me my closest friends and my best learning experiences are the emotional things that are just like not nice and not in a box and not pretty, and there's not really a name for them. And I kind of call this my ambiguous loss, right? That you can't name, or that you can't like, for me, a lot of my losses are just like, they're unfulfilled
I had a
dreams,
baby
and then I
hopes.
lost the baby,
right.
or I had infertility. It's like, I just like always wanted to have a kid. I can, and now that window is closing, and I'm choosing certain things in my life. And there's this other voice that sometimes says, but you could, like, what about like, but you could go do, and right. I'm always like, okay, I'm examining that. Is that what I want? Do I want to raise a baby by myself? Do I want to,
Yeah.
And I'm making choices, and those choices result in sort of outcomes that like, I don't like, but they're my choices and they're my outcomes. And so I have to also sit with like, okay, like I'm living with these. And so sometimes I think, and I'm not one of those people who's going to numb it, but lots of people do, right? But I am one of those people who sort of sometimes says, okay, well then I'm going to go do good to cover it.
Totally. Me too.
I'm going to go do good.
Oh,
I'm going to go do good.
Fill my life with busyness. Yeah. Right? Good busy. I'm going to do really good things.
Yeah.
And that's going to make me feel better.
Yeah.
And it does. Like,
to a degree, right?
There's value in it. But I think what happens a lot of times is, whether it's numbing with addiction or other types of kind of numbing agents that we use, or whether it's like numbing or kind of shutting it down with distraction and busyness and good works, like things we're doing to help other people. Either way, if I'm not doing both, right, then I'm lost, because I'm not whole. Like that part of me is still getting pushed away somewhere, and that part of me wants to exist in the world, and that part of me wants connection. So when I think about like belonging, you have tissues.
Yeah. Perfect.
My pregnancy gave me a runny nose, and 9 years later, it hasn't gone away. I think that's a thing.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know.
I just always have a runny nose, so I have allergies and all the things.
So Brene Brown is somebody who I love, whose books I've read and who I've heard speak, and she talks about connection this way, that it's about vulnerability, right? And so fast forward in my life, I'm living in DC again.
Wait, Chile, you learned Spanish?
I learned Spanish.
Spoke it on your mission. Served.
Loved my mission. Had a wonderful experience.
Okay.
Came home. While I was on my mission, I decided I wanted to be a therapist. So I kind of wanted to decide and apply to school. I was kind of be coming back in the summer and be ready to like start up grad school. And so I decided I wanted to be a therapist. And part of that was being a missionary and listening to people, because what I thought, like, I was like you, like, I'm going to go teach. Right. And I like loved doing that. But what I loved even more was hearing people's stories.
Yeah.
And listening to people. And what I found was
intertwined both years and 9.
And I had a gift. Like, I didn't know that it was a gift, but I discovered that it was a gift in that setting. I had a gift for understanding people. And so they would tell their story and I would just get it. Like, I would be in their story with them and they would feel like I got it, even though I was speaking a second language. And even though I had no context of the kind of life that most of these people had lived, right? Like, I had lived a very different life, but I could get right in there with them and hear it and understand it. And as I like had different companions and different experiences, I was like, oh, like, this isn't normal.
Yeah. This is unique to me.
This is a unique thing. And so I decided I want to be a therapist, and I had a friend who had done the MFT program at BYU. So I only applied there.
Got it.
Hadn't really learned anything. And I got in, and
basically you were destined to go to BYU.
I was destined to go back. I know, exactly. So I went to BYU, and then like, we can get into some of the details, but I was a therapist for all these years, and I had moved to DC, and I was working out there, and I had this little group of friends so I was still single in my 30s. And
wait, let me ask you, did you move out to DC because you had such that great experience previously?
I always wanted to go back.
Okay.
I always wanted to go back. I didn't really know how I would go back once I'd become a therapist, because therapists don't make that much money and it's an expensive place to live.
Also, contextually, they definitely didn't back then.
Yes.
Like, we definitely live in a world where like they make way more than they did. It was so bad. Right?
Yeah, it was really bad.
Just like we were making at the same level as like your typical teacher.
Yeah.
just so people, or less.
Or less.
So people have context. I mean, I'll even throw out a number. When I graduated and got my degree, my first job as a therapist, I made $32,000.
Me too.
Just
yeah, right
to
around
give you guys a number.
Yeah.
So when we say, I just want to contextualize the story. When you're saying
bad.
they don't make that much money, we're talking really
like
low.
You
really, it's like, it was sort of known as like, this is a calling in life.
Yes.
And you're just like doing it because this is how people talk about it, right?
Well,
because you're called and because you're passionate about it, but like, you're not going to make any money doing it.
And you probably need to be in a 2-earner family. Like you probably need to be married. And
which you weren't.
Somebody, which I wasn't.
Yeah. And neither was I. I was like, okay, so I'm just going to be, I know I'm going to be poor and I'm doing the thing that I want to do.
Well, so I had worked in these programs. So I was like you, actually. Like I moved to Arizona on a whim after grad school. I had friends there and I decided I was looking at different jobs and I was like at the point where I was looking at taking an admissions counselor job at the University of Phoenix because there was nothing.
Non-therapy, yeah.
And thank goodness I didn't do that. I would have been terrible at it. And I had a friend from home in Colorado who was working in marketing at Anasazi, and she said, you should come in. And I went in and it was meant to be.
So you also had a friend that
I also had a friend who connected me.
I know. This is so
same
great.
Story, right? And I thought like I wanted to do like premarital counseling. I wanted to do couple stuff. And I didn't think I wanted to work with adolescents. I was still practically an adolescent myself. And I was like, this isn't necessarily for me, but I'll do it. And it'll be a good experience and I'll learn and I'll do it for a year and then I'll find another job. And then I fell in love with it immediately. As soon as I got out there, again, these kids, I could understand them.
Yes.
And they believed I could understand them, which was not the usual, right? For them with therapists.
Yeah.
And so I knew it was a connection that I had to keep. And so I worked there for 2 years and then I moved to Utah because it was too hot in Arizona. Like, that's the bottom line.
No,
it was way too hot for me.
I was like, I cannot live in a place where the sun is always on.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I came back to Utah and I got a job at La Europa, which is where we met. And I worked there for 6 years and pretty quickly became a clinical director and executive director. So I was making a little bit more money. It still wasn't amazing, but I was making a little bit more. I bought a house. I bought a townhouse, which right around when I turned 30, which was like a big milestone moment for me. And feeling
I want to just like give you like younger Courtney, like so big props. I mean, I ended up buying my house on my own too, but I was 40, like 10 years later, right?
Yeah.
Also, like most of our friends that were like single and doing the thing weren't doing that.
No.
I feel like this is very responsible and like a very like, just like an awesome step in your life to just be like, okay, I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to live in the house. I'm going to set up shop.
It feels a little, it's sort of like when people would say like, well, if you go on a mission, you might miss out. It was like, if you buy a house or if you do these sort of grown up things by yourself, then you're giving up.
You're destined
like that's
to be alone.
Just, you're settling into this instead of like hoping, I don't know. There's kind of a weird energy around it, but I was surrounded by awesome other single women who were doing similar things. And so I bought this townhouse and I lived there by myself. So I had a roommate through most of this time who was my best friend. And I love her, still love her. She's still one of my best friends. And she got married and which was really hard for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't want it to be really hard for me. Like, here's an example of an right? I wanted to just be happy for her. I was so happy for her. And I didn't understand it at the time. Like I didn't know how to wrap my head around, I am so happy for you. And I am devastated for me because I wanted this. So there's a comparison going on, which I don't want to admit because I feel like a jerk for comparing myself to you. And I'm also lonely. Like and
you're also losing your best friend.
You're my best friend. Yeah. And you're getting married to somebody.
You're a best friend.
And yes. And
you're your best friend.
And I was like, now what? And so that was part of what kind of urged me into being like, all right, well, I'm going to buy a house and all my younger siblings were also getting married. So I'm the oldest of 5. My brother got married. Like we both came home from our missions. He got married a year later. My sister got married a couple years later. So by this point, 3 of my 4 siblings had gotten married. My best friend's getting married. I was like, I'll buy a house.
I don't know what that's like at all, Courtney.
So I know you don't. It's new, all like brand new information for you. So I bought the house and had an amazing experience living there. Met wonderful people, lived there for 4 years, but I bought in right before the market crashed.
Yeah, this is the other thing
right before 2008.
Is that you made this great financial decision, even if you didn't know that you made this great financial decision.
Well, it didn't look great because like everyone's going under on their houses because the housing market tanked. And when I got this opportunity to move to Washington, D.C., which was sort of crazy, like this person who lived and worked in D.C., I had been working with, he was an educational consultant out there. And I said to him, I was like marketing to him, and I said, I would love to live in D.C. And he said, you want to work here? And I was like, and then it happened and he offered me a job and I was so excited to move there and I couldn't sell my house. Like there was no way. Wow. So I ended up renting it out while I lived in DC for 4 years and also incredible experience there. And that was a situation where I felt like I really wanted to live in DC. I was really excited about that city. I had this cool job, these like cool people that I was going to get to be with out there. And it was a job that would be a lot of travel, which I was excited about. So there were a lot of good things, but it was scary to think about, am I going to really move myself across the country again? And I felt God telling me, yeah, you need to do it. And not only do you need to do it, but you need to engage with a single Mormon community out there.
Wow.
Which I was like, okay, they're cool people. Like these are like really cool.
LDS singles your DC experience was my Boston experience. Yes, it was just
these people are like,
I tell everybody, like, if you can have a chance, and if you're in Boston, come to Utah, whatever. Yeah. If you're a single adult, like, I don't even care if you're Mormon or not, like, move across the country.
Yeah. Go do something.
And go be somewhere with like-minded people that are like also doing the thing, whatever the thing is, right? Because like in Boston, I'm sure it was the same in DC. Like there was the smartest of smartest people, but there's also nannies.
Yes.
And there's also like whatever. I was working for AmeriCorps, so I was like poverty poor, right? Yeah. And so like the dynamic between like who's sitting at the table and in Boston, everything was about intellectual conversations. Right. It didn't matter who you were. Right. You're sitting at a table eating and you're talking, right? Which was my jam. Yeah. When I left Boston, I had years of loss of like, that doesn't exist. That doesn't exist in Arizona. That doesn't exist in Utah. Yeah. I was like, can we bring Boston, sit around and talk about things because we all want to talk about it somewhere else? But that was the culture there, right? Yeah. DC has its own political culture.
But intellectual too. Yes. And I loved all of that.
And transient, right? Like coming in and coming out quickly. Yes. Like I'm doing an internship and I'm out, and I'm doing a thing and I'm out, and I'm...
Yeah. And like you're sitting in church in DC and, some like random person walks in the door and is like acting kind of threatening. And you see like 6 people go for their like ankle gun. Like, and you're like, oh, now I know who works for the FBI.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like such a different world.
So diverse, right? Yeah.
So many different people. And I was really excited about that. And I felt God telling me to go do that. And so I went out there and I go into the singles ward, 30 and over singles ward, and in congregation. And I look around and there's like 4 women for every man. And I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm like, this is not happening. So I went to the family ward. So they sort of separated out. There's like the families in one congregation and the single people in another, not to separate them, but just to make it so that there's an opportunity for some different kind of connection. There were a lot of single people in the family ward too. And I was like, I'm going to do this. This is more comfortable for me. And I felt chastised by God, which doesn't like, this isn't like something that happens to me a lot. Right. But I felt God be like, no, you said you were going to do that thing and you need to do that thing. And so I did. And I was like, okay, well then I guess I'm going to meet my husband here. Right. And I didn't.
There has to be a reason why I am being directed in this way.
I didn't meet him there, but I had a fantastic experience. I loved my people there that I became really good friends with.
Probably a little out of the comfort zone to be in the singles versus the other, right?
Yeah. It was. And so, but I met this group of people. And there were 6 of us. My friend Becky, who she wanted to start like a book club that was more about connection. That was like, let's get together and like really talk about something. Yeah. And she was very picky about who was going to be in this group.
You had to be tapped in.
Yes. And there were 6 of us. There was 3 men and 3 women in this group. And we were all pretty different, like all different kinds of jobs, all different kind of backgrounds, like from all different places in the country. And none of us actually knew each other that well when this started. So she was like the hub. So she knew everybody.
Right.
But like, it was kind of it was like this weird idea. And her idea was like, let's get together and be real. And so she suggested that we should read Daring Greatly by Brene Brown.
Love it.
And this is a pretty new book at that time. Like I didn't know it. I think somebody actually had gifted it to me. Like a therapist had gifted it to me. And so I had the book, but I hadn't read it.
On the shelf.
I know. And we started reading it, and it took us like a year to read it. Like we read a couple chapters at a time.
Because it was the secondary thing to the group, right?
Yes.
The book was.
But the book was like inviting us to talk about things in this real way, because the book talks about how vulnerability is actually the only thing that allows us to have connection.
Yeah.
And I believed myself to be pretty open. Like, I thought like, no, I talk about myself. Like, I'm not afraid to be real. Like, I'll cry in public. I'm not like, I thought myself to be open. But the more I read that book, the more I realized that that vulnerability was a struggle for me. And I think it was this exact thing where it's like, I want you to see me, but I want to be in control of what you see of me. I want to be
seen as.
Yes.
I want to be seen as this and put together and this.
100%.
And I'm an extrovert and I'll cry and I have emotions.
Yeah.
But I'm going to show you my emotions on my terms and like where I want to. Yeah. I don't necessarily need you to see my messy.
I definitely don't need you to see my messy.
Yeah.
I am in control and I'm like strong and I'm fun and I'm like
smart. Yeah.
And I'm happy. Like I needed that to be seen too. I think partly because I was pushing back against people being like, oh, you're not married.
Yeah.
Oh, you poor thing. You know,
like
feeling pity for me that hadn't happened for me yet. And so I didn't want to be seen that way.
Right.
So I sort of started to realize, oh, like this is harder than I thought.
Can I add one more level? Because I feel like this is a mirror. And I want to ask you also this. I also knew pretty early into being a therapist and stuff that I was not very good at being vulnerable. But part of it was a learned behavior is that like, while I was working very hard and consistently for years and years on being a good listener, everybody else around me was not.
Yeah.
And so when I would attempt to like be vulnerable, I would often see my friends, even my friends that I loved dearly, they just couldn't do the thing. They couldn't listen very well. And they usually would switch it around to them. And then I was like, oh, the skill of being a good listener is a double-edged sword. Yeah. People see me as a good listener, so they'll talk to me, but they're also not that great at listening.
Yeah.
So it's not that they couldn't hold the stuff, but I learned really quickly what my role in my friendships was. And it wasn't to be doing what they were doing.
Yeah.
So they felt really connected to me because they were open and I would listen.
Yeah.
But I was like, you don't really know.
Yeah.
What the heartache of my soul. And I've tried a few times. And so I don't know if you also were like, okay, other people, I just had this like other people aren't that good at it.
Yeah. I had some good people in my life. I had some other therapists in my life who were good at it. There was one when I was working at Anasazi, who's Sandra, who is like the best listener you'll ever meet. You cannot get her to tell you anything about herself. She 100% turn it around, which I got sneaky about. And got to know her, and she's a wonderful human, and we're also still really good friends. But she was like next level good listener. And so I had people, and I had other therapists that I worked with at Lyropa and people who could really listen.
Hold the space, yeah.
Yeah. And my mom's a good listener, and a good like questioner. She's curious and she asks a lot of questions. She always has. So I had people, but I think I still didn't really want to put it all out on the table. And I especially didn't want to put it all out on the table in dating.
Right.
So like I had like studied hope, and I was like invested in trying to understand kind of where I was at in my life that way. And I was just going about my life and trying to be successful and like do the thing that I was doing and that I felt like I was good at, and I was building a name for myself in that world. And so those things all felt good, and I wasn't good at the end. I was doing a lot of
this group helped you uncover this thing.
And it was slow, and I didn't even necessarily know that it was happening. But during that time, so I already knew my husband when we has started this group. Like we had met and become friends a few years earlier, and we didn't live in the same place. But we kept having these run-ins, connections. And I like to say that part of the reason we're together is because I was accidentally vulnerable.
Okay.
And that is that we had this mutual friend who we're still really good friends with, who we had traveled together, and that like when we met, she was there. And she got engaged, and the night that she got engaged, she and her fiance and his sister got in a car to drive from Utah to Arizona and got in a horrible accident. Yeah. And he and his sister died in the accident, and he was life flighted he wasn't paralyzed, but he broke his neck. He broke his neck and his back, and he was life flighted to Vegas. And this was the week of Thanksgiving, and Bailey, my friend, who I'm really close. She's like a sister. And so she's in Vegas. She's meeting her future in-laws for the first time in a hospital in Vegas where they just lost their daughter and their son is in the ICU. And Rob, who's my husband now, was visiting me in DC, and he knows her too. And so he showed up, and I was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness you're here. I don't know what to do. I'm supposed to be traveling next week for work, and I'm trying to decide if I should go to Las Vegas and be with her. And he was just there at a time when my guard was down because I was trying to figure out how to show up for my friend. And he was so like, we connected, and it still wasn't romantic, but there was this connection where I was like, oh, you're a person who knows how to show up for people. And I hadn't been able to see him that way before because he showed up for me in a way that I didn't know that I needed.
Yeah.
Which I think is like, this is accidental vulnerability, right? Yeah. Where it's like, I didn't know that I needed someone to show up for me right now because it's about her, right? Like she's the one in this horrible trauma.
And you just hadn't, because you'd been singling it and taking care of yourself, an independent woman, right? This is the thing about that.
100%.
Is that you just sort of figure out how to just like, no one else is going to meet your needs, and no one else you can't be dependent on anybody else. And so you just sort of figure out how to do it.
Yeah. Because that's what you're supposed to do, because I'm a strong, like, feminist woman at this point. Yes. And like, I don't need somebody. And people would say things like, well, your life would be better if you had a husband. And I'd be like, at a certain point, you kind of start to shut that down and be like, yes, that's what I want, but I want it. I don't need it. Like, I'm okay. I can function on my own. I'm doing great. But it's so
like thou protesteth too much almost, right?
Yeah.
There's this just like needing to sort of like I don't have the other option. Like people would approach me in my life with like, well, blah, blah, blah. And I often would say like, and maybe this is the like super vulnerable part of me, is that like, you don't know this, but you're making me feel less than or broken, or because what you don't know is there's not a million people waiting in line. I haven't gone on a date in 2 years. Like no one's showing up at the door. Right. Like, so if you say to me, it just propels this need again to say like, I don't know what do you mean? Like, this is what I would say. Yeah. It's not like I'm saying no to a million people. There's this perceived notion that like, you're good looking and you're smart and like you must be dating. And when I'd be like, I haven't even been asked out. It's been 3 years, at one point in my life, people are like, what do you mean? And they're like, this is what I literally mean. I mean, people don't ask me out. There's not a line. I'm not telling people no. I'm not choosing to be single because I'm choosy. Yeah. Right. Like, and I do want to choose my partner. Like everybody should get to choose their partner. Right. So, but I wasn't really saying no at all. Yeah. I wasn't getting opportunities to say yes. So there's this part that like, you have to sort of figure out this balance between this. So accidental vulnerability, I think, is the best thing that ever happens to people, though, right? Your guard is down 100%. And you're like are needing somebody, and you're a person who never wants to be needy. Yeah. This is like the
I need to be
kryptonite.
I am the one that takes care of everybody else.
And so
I need to be seen that way.
About Rob, and if Rob were here, and I contemplated him being here with you, I just mostly wanted to just like be all about Courtney. But is that Rob, even though, this is my guess, you tell me, Courtney, even though Rob also knew this tragedy was over here, Rob could see you. Yes. And he could show up for you. Yes. He could do this duality thing where he could say like, yes, this is sad and this is hard. And hey, Courtney, worthy enough, you're inherently loved enough, you're important enough that like you also need support.
Yeah.
You're having secondary trauma, you're having whatever we would call it things in therapy, but he's saying, I see you.
I see you.
And you're seeing
and
this.
I'm not going to ask you what you need me to do. I'm just going to start doing it. And there was something really powerful about that. I didn't know it at the time. Like I wasn't super conscious that this was happening, but as like time played out, I was like, wow, like he really showed up. And I had not seen him that way. And he wasn't as vulnerable as I was in that moment. But he was showing up differently because I was being vulnerable.
Oh yeah.
Right. So
there was
like
a space for him to like fill a thing.
Yes. And the way that our relationship had been was sort of like a little bit of a pissing contest. It was like who's stronger and better and like knows more about stuff, which usually was
an intellectual
him because we were in this like music world. And I was like, and he would just be like, I'm cool and I know stuff. And he had this major wall up in his life, and he had learned how to do that over a lot of years and a lot of shame and other things that he was experiencing. And so he wasn't letting his guard down, but he was showing up as the person that he knows how to be when somebody like is allowing them to show up.
Yeah.
So I got to see this side of him that I hadn't seen before because we were always kind of doing this dance of like, I'm good, I'm strong, like I don't need anybody with each other.
And then out of your control, right? Circumstances literally crash into your life and and the wall comes down and he can show up because well, I kind of see it like, I tell the story sometimes where I was dating somebody and he was like 6 years younger than me. And like we had dated like 9 months, but I threw out my back and I literally was immobile and I'm laying on the couch and he's like showing up and serving me. And I am like feeling really bad that like I can't contribute. And one day he's like kneeling down by the couch, just talking to me. And he was like in tears. And I was like, what? Like, why are you so emotional? And he's like, because I finally get to like serve you. I had to be like physically broken.
Yeah, you have to be.
I had to literally, and I was like, God was just like, listen.
Yeah.
Like listen to the actual words that he just said to you. Like in all of your capableness, in all of your ability to do, maybe you present a message or you send a thing that you don't need anybody.
Yes.
And therefore people don't feel like they can show up, right? Like he was very much verbally saying like, he's like, I just feel like you always can take care of yourself. And what is my role in our relationship if you always take care of yourself? And I was like going through a lot of feelings because I was like, I always take care of myself because I've never had anybody else.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not because I wanted to be this way. It's become this thing because out of like safety, out of shelter, out of like, and I was like, man, I don't know how to shed this. Anyway, it was a very pivotal moment for me.
For all of I think that's the case for all the things that we do to guard ourselves. It's like it comes out of necessity.
Yeah. It wasn't initially maladaptive and then it became maladaptive, right? By like circumstances.
Right. But you didn't choose it.
Yeah.
It was sort of like, and I didn't know that I was this way. I thought I wasn't.
That's the thing. One of the reasons why I want to talk to you and why I wanted you to be on here is because I know we're kind of we have sort of mirror lives, and I know there's way other women in particular that are like us. Like there just are, that are just like doing good and growing good and trying to feel their emotions and maybe hyper vigilant about their independence and maybe not wanting to be, and just like, and like the accidental vulnerability is necessary, right?
Yes.
The like, unfortunately, and I remember thinking this, I remember saying to God, I'm like, I'm so sad that unfortunately I needed to be literally broken to get this experience. I'm sure for you, like there's some loss or some sorrow in that, like you had to have this huge accident to be able to like, that shifts your gears to let your guard down and off in front of somebody at the right time. And I think this is how it goes though.
Although I think Bailey feels really glad that she gets to be part of the story that way.
Yeah.
Because she's that kind of person who would like wanted it so desperately for me too.
Yeah.
And because she knows both of us, and that was kind of magical to her. Not that anybody
what a beautiful like flower among the thorns, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and I don't wish that story or that experience on anybody, and especially on that family that went through that. And I'm grateful, right?
Yes.
For the end. Part of what happened from it was this thing for me, and it was still like a year and a half later. I mean, it was a long time after this. So I hadn't started reading Daring Greatly at this point. This was like, in hindsight, I could see that this had happened. And then when I was doing this book club with these friends, and Rob and I had quite a few other interactions since then.
Well, I think the world outside of you guys just saw you guys as kind of like best friends.
We were friends.
Or friends.
Yeah.
Like, it was very known.
Yeah. We were friends. And
maybe friends that nobody thought would ever really romantically connect.
The funny thing about it is that, so we met through my cousin, who I'm really close with. He was going to London to record this piece of music. I'll be really, no, it's my cousin is Rob Gardner. The piece of music was Lamb of God. Yes. And he and I are really close. And we had been like working together on this thing. And he said, okay, well, we're going to go to London. We're going to record in London. I need some voices to sing in the booth while I'm recording the orchestra so I get the tempos right. And so he asked Bailey, so she's a singer.
Right.
And then he asked this guy, Rob, who I didn't know, who lived in California at the time. And he was like, I said, why are you bringing some random stranger on our trip? Like, I'm not good with this. He's like, he's great. You're going to, it's fine. I said,
talented.
I said, well, is there like a potential for a love connection? He said, no. Which
I think was a common.
I know.
Common thought at the time, right?
But partly because Rob had they're both Rob, but
yes.
My husband Rob had so many walls up, and I think my cousin saw that, and he was like, no, she won't go for that. Like, that's not going to be a thing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. Like, we met, we had a great time in London. We became friends. We saw each other a little bit over the years. We all went back.
I feel like your guys' intellect fell in love with your intellect.
Yes.
Your like strength fell in love with your strength, right? There were things that you guys were attracted to.
He can sing. And that's really sexy.
Can he sing?
Yeah, like he can sing. And it was, and when I heard him sing, I was like, oh, I get it. I get why you invited him.
I mean, people say people can sing all the time, but there's a few people that are just.
Yes.
You might be considered biased because you're his wife, but I'm not. And I can say, like.
And singing.
You guys, and I do.
Yeah.
I know. I a lot of, like, man, I try to show up. When Rob's going to sing, I try to show up because, like, it's a. Transcendental experience. I feel like it's a very godly experience to hear somebody who has that gift. Like, he's talented in addition to, but he has a gift.
He's skilled. Like, he's a teacher. He knows how to teach the skill.
I always tell the people there is a difference between, you can't just say someone's really gifted if they really have a skill. He's got both, but honestly, he definitely, it's one of his spiritual gifts, right? Like, he's connected
for sure.
Yeah.
And so, we made a connection, and then we became friends. There was sort of a flirtation between us at a certain point, but I was like, I don't think this is real, because he could sort of get away with
lovers is so interesting, right?
Yeah. And it took a long time. And so we met in 2010. We didn't start dating till 2014, and we were long distance. So I was in DC, and he had moved to Utah by that point. And I'm in this group, and I'm like, I think I need to tell Rob that I maybe have feelings for him. And they were like, dare greatly, like, I
love that you had this little well of like belonging
for real. No, it's like, there's like a text chain. I'm like, you guys, I'm going to tell him so was
that so scary?
So scary.
I can almost feel the scariness here.
Yes. Because at this point, there was something to lose,
Oh gosh, yeah.
This was a friendship that really mattered to me, and I didn't want to lose the friendship. And I think there was a part of me that kind of knew I wouldn't, but I was so academic about how I told him.
I want to see the receipts.
Really anxious. I was like, we were in person, and we went out. Yes.
Okay, so good.
I came to see him, and we went out on a kind of a date. And I told him, I was like, and it was so awkward. And, but I was like, basically I blurted it out. And then I said, I just have to say it. And I just need to know what you want to say about it, because if I don't say it, then I'm going to resent you for not knowing and not doing something about it. And so let's just have the conversation.
Put it on the table.
I told him it was okay to tell me it's not happening before I even let him speak. I was trying to have the whole conversation without
by yourself. Yeah.
Yes. And so, and he was like, okay, well, we're in the car at this point. He's like, all right, I kind of need a minute to process this. And then I'm getting mad because I'm like, how did you not see this coming? This is obvious. We've been holding hands and flirting and getting vulnerable. So before this had happened, he had gotten sort of accidentally vulnerable too. And he had also really bad back problems.
Yeah.
In the continuing like mirroring of our lives. So he, I think, had like really opened up about some hard things in his life. And I received that in a pretty like, I think I was like, okay. You know, like I didn't freak out by some of the things that he had, hard things that he had experienced. Yeah. And so, so I was like, please don't pretend like this is shocking to you, you know?
Right.
So he's like, okay. So he kisses me, and then we like make out, and then I leave, and I'm going to see him again the next night. And I'm actually going to stay at his place the next night because I'm traveling for work and I have to go somewhere that's near where he lives. And they have a guest room, and his little condo that he shared with a friend. And, I was having dinner with my family the next day, and I said, "Do you want to come to dinner?" And he's like, "No, definitely not. My like family, no, like that's not happening."
We just kissed, Courtney.
No, this is way too fast. So I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's 4 years." And he said, "No." So I was like, "Okay." And so the next day, I hear nothing from him the whole entire day.
Oh wow!
So by the time by the time I get to his house, I'm like pissed. I'm like, "What is going on?" And I get to his house for a party. It's a Tony's party. He's a music theater person. Yeah. There's all these people that I don't know. And thankfully Bailey and Taylor came, and I was like, "We kissed." By the way, she's like, freaking out. And so everybody leaves, and I'm staying. And so he's like, "All right, I'm going to go to bed." And I was like, "No, you're not." I am feeling really exposed and vulnerable here. Like we gotta have a conversation. He's like, "Oh, really?" You know, I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Like this is a pulling teeth kind of a moment. And so we had a really good conversation. He was like, "This is hard. Like we're like live across the country from each other." I was like, "I know. I travel a lot. Like we can figure it out." And he's like, "What's going to help you feel less vulnerable and exposed?" And I was like, "I don't know." I said, "I think I just need to know that like if we're going to just try to move this along at like a normal pace, because that's hard to do long distance and when you have a relationship to start with, then I just need to know that if you're like you're feeling it now, and if you stop feeling it, and you will just tell me, because I can't be ghosted by you." Like I can't have the experience of like wondering if you are feeling something different, because I'm not going to see your face every day. And we both have really busy lives, and there's going to be a lot going on. And so I just need to trust that if I don't hear from you, it doesn't mean something bad. It's just, I just didn't hear from you.
Can I pause? Because you have this gift. I just want to pull back and say like, gosh, what a gift to like ask for what you need.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it was gifted to me because that is exactly what I needed, but I don't know that I could have told somebody else if they asked me.
Even if they know, they don't say it, right?
Yes.
Like we cannot expect people, I'm not even talking romantic relationships, friendships, family. We cannot expect people to know and read our minds, right? And if we want people to show up for us, even we have to be willing for them to disappoint us. The way that we have to be willing for them to disappoint us is to help them understand what it means to show up for us and either do it or don't.
Yeah.
If we never express like what it is we need or what it is we want, then we're mostly always going to be disappointed because we haven't told anybody how to do either side, right? It's like this, I just want to say to people, like we're always talking about connection and maybe the opposite of disconnection. And one really big part of connection is helping people to like showing people what you need or helping people how can they show up for you? Like they can't read your mind. Right. And we probably should get rid of that a little bit. Like the expectation that people should read our minds. Right.
Yeah.
Or that 100%. It's so needy to say like, here's what I would like you to do.
Or that it's like, if you really knew me, you would know what I need. Or it's like, somehow take something away from the relationship. Take some mystery,
and it's so not sexy, right? Like, and part of me wants to say, like, real relationships are not sexy, and real relationships are not like they're just kind of like a lot of it is perfunctory, a lot of it is like, let me talk about the thing, right? This is not where the magic happens. This is where we like sort of say, here, the magic happens when the person chooses to show up in the way that you asked, or when the person doesn't, and then you have repair, and you're like, you knew that I needed this, and you didn't, and can we talk about it?
Right.
That's where I think.
I agree agree.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, if I go back to Brene Brown, like, that's where connection and belonging are found, is because where I feel connected is when I feel seen.
Yeah.
But I need to be seen for who I really am. And so much of what we try to do with connection is about appearance. Like, it's about, because connection is hard and requires vulnerability, and it's easier to look for approval. Like, it's easier to look for people to just to see me and like see what I want them to see. And we don't realize how much that blocks us from having real connection. And that doesn't mean we should do that with everybody.
Yeah.
Like, and she says that too. She says, like, your story is precious and sacred, and it is yours, and you need to decide who you share it with, and you need to be careful about who you share it with. So we don't, like, there's over vulnerability, and people do that too. And that's not real connection either. Right. Right. Because it has to be safe enough for people to see each other.
And I want to add, because I've had this experience, and I've had some of my friends on here, like, I feel very like, really beholden to my relationships that I have. I like to foster them. I want people to know I love them, even if I've been friends with them for decades. And I also want to help people. I want to have critical conversations, because critical conversations to me mean I care about you enough that, like, something happened and I'm not just going to, like, let that just go in our friendship. Yeah. I don't want a friendship or relationships or loves of my life to be like, just like, we're just moving along and we're just like good, right? I would rather cause some friction. I would rather say to you, like, I was hurt by this. You didn't show up at this. I felt like I kind of told you that I wanted you and you didn't. And, like, I don't very often ask you to show up for me. And when you didn't, it really hurt me. For that person, I'm not trying to hurt them, but I'm trying to say, like, you have the power to hurt me when I tell you something, because I don't do this very often, and then you don't listen and hear me. And this friend has the opportunity to do whatever they want to do, like close up, be defensive, be like, you know, you do a lot of things. They can't show up for you all the time, whatever. They can say whatever. My hope, and what usually happens in people in our friendships, right, is that they say, oh, like, you're right. Like, I didn't. Yeah. And you did, actually, kind of. And, like, I'm going to do better next time, right? Yeah. And then they do. They show up at the next thing or whatever, right? Are we better friends, or do we love better? Are we more connected when we have these critical conversations? I think so. Yeah. I think we're really afraid of pain, really pain averse. Yeah. And we would almost rather not have critical conversations because of potential outcome that would be like, well, it's going to cause problems, rather than the potential outcome that it's going to bring us closer. Right. Right.
Right. When Rob and I were dating, we were getting kind of closer to getting engaged, and we had actually been looking at rings, and he told the person at the ring store, he's like, well, this isn't happening for a while. And we got in the car, and I was like, when you say a while, like, what are you talking about? He said, I don't know. And he said he felt like he was waiting until he thought he could be a perfect husband.
Oh gosh.
That, like, he said, what if I hurt and disappoint you? And I said, you will hurt and disappoint me. Like, that is a relationship. Yeah. And I will forgive you.
Relationship, yeah.
And we will work it out. That's what it means to be in a relationship, which was like a revelation to him. Because in his mind, it was like, until I know that I can, like, that I'm never going to disappoint somebody, I can't let myself be in that relationship. And that's shame. That's rooted in shame, in a belief that I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not going to be able to show up the way that this person needs me to. Yeah. And we're all going to fail at it. That's the struggle. Like, we're going to fail at it, and then we're going to have to make it right. And we're going to have to repair and own up to the things that we're not doing well. And we're probably going to make the same mistake a lot of times, you know, like, it takes a minute to learn. It takes a while to figure out and to break habits that we've had. And when you're 37, so I was 37 when we got married, and so was he, first marriage for both of us. And when you're 37, you've developed a lot of habits, you know,
and your autonomy more than anything. It's like, I remember my friends that were older that got married, and one of my friends said, I'm going to tell you something that I never thought about when I was single, so that you can think about it now while you're single. And I was like, oh, she's like, or he was like, it was a guy friend. He's like, I had never had to have, when it came to food, I always fed myself, or I just stopped by, or I got whatever. And he's like, I got married, and my wife that also was this independent, started to feel like she had to prepare meals and be like this person. And so she started, and then we had this big disconnect because I would just grab dinner on my way home from work because he had this patterns, right?
Yes.
And she would be like, she didn't tell him I made dinner.
Yeah.
She was like, made dinner. She was like, I'm here, cute. And he's like, it was such a mismatch for us. Yeah. And we had to have this conversation about like, well, let's just talk about it. If you're going to make dinner, then that's fine. And I won't buy, but they'd never had to communicate about food. They had spent their whole lives. And I was like, oh, thank you for telling me that story because I would 100% fall into that.
Yes.
I would probably not be the new wife at like 40 that would be like, I'm going to make you dinner. I'm going to be like, I don't make dinner, so figure it out. Yes. But I would for sure be the one that like bought the dinner on the way home and didn't think about the other person. What he was saying is I had to learn how to anticipate or think about somebody else in even the strangest things but I had spent so much of my life that I never had to talk to anybody else about it.
Yes.
Where I was, like my location of where I was going to be, what I was going to eat. So like there's this whole life you guys had built independent of each other, right? And then
we never lived in the same place. I lived in DC and he lived here, and we got married in DC and then moved me across the country,
which is wild, which is
crazy. So and worked out. Like and it's not perfect. It's not like we disappoint each other.
Yeah.
And we work it out. And he's all the things that I experienced in that initial moment of vulnerability as far as somebody who can show up. And I didn't know how much I was going to need that because I was such an independent, like strong person. And we both knew that we wanted to have kids. And and we were really lucky. Like we got pregnant pretty fast and we had this awesome child, Sabrina. She's turning 9 on Tuesday.
Such a spitfire.
Yes, she is her parents' child.
Yes.
And everything, like it was a little bit of a hard pregnancy, and I was old. So, so
geriatric they
pregnancy.
Say.
Yes. So, but after she was born, a couple weeks later got a fever and they couldn't figure out what it was, and ultimately ended up in the hospital, had an infection in an ovary, and they had to take the ovary and my uterus. And so my daughter's 3 weeks old and I'm lying in the hospital bed, like just desperate to get home to her. Like I just want to be with my baby. And they're like, well, we're going to need to take your uterus. And I'm like, okay. Like
this is the hysterectomy, right?
This is the hysterectomy. This is like the biggest moment in my life. And that's the moment that I was talking about when you heard me, which is like, I am really holding this gratitude for this baby, like, and desperate to be with this child. And also like, here goes the rest of any chance at having any more. And we're both children of many, like lots of siblings.
That sibling you want, that's so deep.
Yeah. And at the time I'm just like, do whatever you have to do. Just get me home to my baby, but that was a painful, this is a turning, you talk about those moments, right? This is a moment of like, here it is. And the ambiguous loss that you have as a single person, the ambiguous loss of like infertility that exists for so many people, of not being able to have a child for a long time when you really want to, that like this was not ambiguous. This was like, here we go. We're taking the thing that makes it so that you can
out of your control too, out of your timing. There was no closure. It was just like, boom.
Right. It's just happening. And so, and like it's happening in a moment that's like the greatest moment of your life. Like you just had this baby that you've wanted your whole entire life.
Yeah. Complicated.
Yeah, so complicated. And so like we had to experience that and to like really try to live in the gratitude without beating ourselves up with the gratitude, like to experience both things.
And I just want to pause for a second because I don't think we give enough time to like Rob is experiencing different things as well, right? Like Rob's got a brand new baby, but he's also got a wife that's like in the hospital, like having scary surgery. Men, aren't ever having the baby. They don't ever have control of that other than they're part of that process, right? And then there's also a loss on his end of like not having any kids, right? But he's also in a caretaker position where he's taking care of his wife and baby, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and who's taking care of Rob? I don't know. Like he has family and friends, right? But this is what we call complicated grief, right? There's a whole, and we're trying to find joy and we're trying to celebrate this thing that I think both of you at some point were even wondering if you would have it all, right? This is the thing. If you're 20 and you have this, like it's different, right? If you're 37, 38, because you're like, because I guess what I want to say is the joy is heightened in the time that you've waited to have the baby.
Right.
And it's also, the other side is also heightened because you're like, we finally did the thing. We got married. We had a kid. We're going to have a sibling. We're on the path.
Yes.
We waited so long.
Yeah.
And then,
yes.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And that's all. And we were experiencing it together, and we both had our own kind
individual
of pieces to that, and we could show up for each other, and we needed other people to show up too. And here it is again, like accidental vulnerability, where it's like, you develop some connection because of who shows up for you in those moments, and how they show up and how they see you, and it creates.
Who's not afraid to be in the hard?
Who's not afraid to be there?
Even if they're awkward, they're just like, I'm here.
Yeah,
I don't know what to do or say, but I'm here.
Yeah, and I don't actually tell this story very much, but I was laying in the hospital, and I was so sad. And also so happy, like feeling all of it, and
so
also
many
hormonal.
I was gonna say,
yeah, and my sister called. My sister is 8 years younger than I am, and she had 3 kids, and she was done having kids, and she called me, and I told her what was happening, and I was like, oh, like, this is so sad that we won't be able to have a sibling. And she said to me, Courtney, my uterus is your uterus.
Oh God.
And I was like, okay, like, I'm not even going there right now, right? But she actually did. So I kept an ovary. We went through the IVF process a while later, and we got an embryo, and we implanted it in my sister, and it didn't take, so that didn't happen. But she was willing to do that. Like, wow, yeah, that's showing up, right? Like, that's real connection. And my sister doesn't live here. Like, we don't see each other that much. She's a way better feminist than I am. But she knows how to show up, and she's
offer what you have, right?
Offer what you have, which is a really big thing to offer somebody. But I think what I discovered in that specific experience was this idea that, like, if we can figure out a way to hold both, to hold the healing, like joy, gratitude, healing emotions, and the hard emotions at the same time, then we start to be able to live more joyfully in a world where the loss still exists. Yeah. Like, that loss is the loss. It's gone. I don't like that. My child doesn't have a sibling, and that's the end of that story. Like, it
does reverberate every time. It's sort of like loss of life also reverberates, right? Like, the picture of my family after my brother died is never the same.
Exactly.
Do we create memories and all kinds of things, and we're not like sobbing over him all the time. We have absolute joy. Our family has become a different version of our family, right? But are there moments for me as the oldest that, like, there is a chair empty in the scene? Always, right? Yes. I have learned to, like, love that chair rather than fear that or push that chair away. It's like, oh, that chair's always there.
Yes.
Just recently, and some years we lean in a little bit more than other years. This year I put up a thing of my brother who would be 41. I put some pictures up. My family all, like, talked about it. My sister, who was very young, who has 3 of her own kids, was like, what's his favorite color? And what's his favorite food? And what's his favorite birthday cake? And with her little kids, they had my brother Grant's, like, favorite food and cake, and my niece, who's like 5 or 6, was like, do you think that God lets Grant, like, look down and see that we love and miss him? This is what, and they're not a religious family. And my sister told to my, this to my family. My parents were on a mission in Africa, and they're like, yeah, I think God does. Like, Uncle Grant, like, sit down and see his niece who doesn't know him at all, but, like, celebrating his birthday, right? And I think, like, this, right? Like, I don't know. I believe that, like, you believe that, like, grief is part of the story, and we need to sit with it and buy it and have it, and not be so afraid and pain averse and push it down and numb it. And
because my instinct in suffering tells me to check out of connection, because connection requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is scary when I'm suffering. And so my instinct says check out of connection, and that's what addiction is, and that's what over busyness is, and that's what distraction looks like, is I'm checking out of connection. And I find that like the quickest way back into connection is through gratitude. And it's not I should feel grateful. It's not I'm going to beat myself up with that I need to feel grateful. It's that gratitude is accessible when the other emotions aren't, because I can always notice, like there's always something around me, and maybe it's in nature, and maybe it's in music, and maybe it's in a person, but like there's always something that I can connect to that's gratitude, and gratitude immediately moves me back into connection instead of that instinct to disconnect from it
or compare
because we know
comparison underneath the joy, right?
Oh,
like
yes.
This person has this or this or this. Like genuine gratitude, the unberated kind, will help you be present. I mean, to use a very therapist word, right? We talk about really how to enjoy your best life is to be really present in your life. And this is, to me, to be present is to be connected, right? Whether it's nature, music, whatever, but to be really connected, you have to sort of, you have to sort of find a new way to sort of sit with these two things. Over time, you have a new story, you have a new thing. You can actually find some healing in the this is our story. Like Sabrina's going to be a single child. So we look at life and we build life differently because of this. Yeah. Right.
And there's a lot of good things about that.
Yeah.
And the Mother's Day after the surrogacy didn't take, Rob's mom is a quilter, and he had this idea to make a quilt, like to have her help make a quilt that was made of triangles, because this is our triangle family. And he gave it to me on Mother's Day, and I was like, no. I am not ready.
You have finalized this. Please no. Yeah. This is the hard thing about vulnerability too, because it can miss, right?
Yes. I was like, I'm not ready for the triangle quilt yet.
I love this. Thank you for that honest story. Yeah, that's real.
Yes, that's real. It's real. And it was a beautiful thought.
Yeah.
And the triangle quilt is on our bed. Like we live the triangle quilt now, but it took me longer than it did him to get to a place of sort of acceptance of that. And it's still like she still cries that she doesn't have brothers and sisters. And so I may be okay with it, but she's not yet. Yeah. And so I get to show up with her in her grief about this. This is the ambiguous grief that my daughter experiences, because everybody around her has so many siblings.
Right.
Everybody. And she's the only kid in her school that's an only child. And she's the only kid in our family that's an only child, and be either side of the family. Yeah. Right. So that's really, that's a complicated thing for her. And it's hard for us because we feel like then I go into well, I failed you, you know, like my body failed you. I failed you.
The interesting thing is we zoom out and we started with your story, and we started as both of us really being single, and we know there's so much joy in that. And there's so much opportunity for resilience and making and losing relationships all the time when you're single, right? Because you're coming and going. Yeah. And so we know that with wisdom and time, we're like, oh, she's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And all the things you just said.
And she's not going to have siblings as an adult. And that is always going to be a loss for her. And I hope she marries somebody that has siblings. Yeah. She's close relationships with her cousins. These are friends, Bailey and Taylor. They have 4 kids. She's close with them. She's going to have those relationships, but it's not the same as having a sibling. And she's never going to have that.
Yeah.
And we're not going to have, multiple children to bring back for family reunion,
multiple grandchildren. Yeah.
And so these are losses
it's a generational loss, right? So when we're talking about loss, we're not talking about the event.
No,
that's
it's on and on. And we're continuing to experience that in different ways in our life. And she's learning from that experience, and she has to show up in a different way in a family. She has all these roles. She's the oldest, middle, and youngest child, and she fits all of the criteria. So it's sometimes I'm like, oh, there's the youngest child moment. There's the oldest child moment. She's all the things. Yeah. And that's a lot of pressure on a child to be all the things to these people who dreamed and wanted you forever, and now you're it. Yeah. You better be good. You know?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot, I think, on her that way. And it's ongoing grief that we experience.
I want to punctuate again, because there was actual loss in the uterus and actual loss in the like ending of this sort of like idea or dream of having siblings. And then there's this stages of ambiguous loss, right? That happened where we don't ritualize them and we don't memorialize or commemorate it. I just filmed a solo podcast that I'm gonna release about grief and specifically talking about stages. And for me as a single person, it's not just like, oh, I'm just sad because I'm single. There's like all these stages of life. Like I have friends now whose kids are graduating from college, right?
Me too.
And they're doing the thing, and I'm just like, man, I like wish I was going on a date. And you have kids that are like graduating from college, and I'm like missing this whole like thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And like they're not having what I'm having, right? They're not experiencing like what I'm experiencing, and neither are right or wrong, but they are both very like one of my friends that's kid is graduating from college is in a very difficult marriage and is feeling very lonely in that marriage, right? There's loss. And so it's not so much about like comparing or being like, it's just sort of, I think I want to speak out, and I think you're very passionate about like we live in a finite society in America with grief that like pretty much we talk about like loss of life or death, and that's what we've ritualized, and that's what we've commemorated, and that's what we've sort of like figured out how to honor. And beyond that, maybe a little bit more nowadays with miscarriage and infant loss, and a little bit more with ambiguous loss when it comes to like dementia, because there's been more of that. So there's a few more, but beyond maybe with
divorce a little bit, maybe,
but like all the levels. I mean, Courtney, I think I told you before we filmed this, I talk out loud and name 17 different kinds of grief in this podcast that I'm doing, because I wanted to sit in one place and talk about like,
there's so many things,
so many sides of grief, right? And I just don't think we as people, I don't want to use the word honor. I don't know if that's the right word. Honor or like sit with.
We don't even
or
name
marinate.
It.
Or name.
We don't even name it.
What it is.
And so when like we know when somebody experiences a grief of losing a loved one, that like we understand what they're experiencing on some level. Like we get that, what that grief looks like. And if we don't name it that way, for people who are going through infertility, for people who are single and don't want to be, for people who are going through divorce, for people who
married but are like isolated in their marriage,
for people who like consistently don't get the job that they want, or who are
people
who are missing out on
go to the Olympics and then they're 22 and what do I do with my life, and what did I exchange for this?
Can I name it? Like, can I name that these things are grief, that this is loss, and that when I go through a loss, that there are emotions that are connected to that, even if on some level I chose it. Like even if it's divorce, even if it's I'm going to be done having kids, and that's still like now I'm done with that part of my life, and that's hard, and there's some loss involved in that. There's some grieving in that.
Joy sometimes as a single person, I'm just going to say this because this is where I sit. Like when I bought my house, like when you buy a house with a partner, usually there's like this combined like, oh, we bought a house, we've arrived, maybe your family, right? I threw myself a housewarming party. Well, my mom kind of was like, my mom jokingly said, like, we're going to have your like wedding reception at your housewarming party, meaning you don't have all the things you need for a house and you never got married and never had the thing.
Yeah.
So, and I kind of was hurt by that. And then I kind of was like,
sure.
Yeah, give me things.
I need
and so we had this and we kind of commemorated it, and I had joy, but I also, it was in a very grieving spot. I never wanted to buy my house by myself.
Right.
I never really wanted to be celebrated by myself, but there was also this like, yeah, we should do this more. Like, I wish I could help people. I wish, because we don't name it as much and because people don't share it as much, I wish I could memorialize it, or I wish we could ritualize it, or what do we do? You know, I'm fascinated with it.
There's the dialectic. Like, how do I hold both?
Yeah.
Because this is a hard thing.
How do you talk about it more in society? I guess I, like you, want to just like be more permission giving to people to just like, I feel like I've been a little bit more vulnerable about my losses as a single person, partly because it does connect me to people, but partly because I hope it's like permission giving for other people to also like I call it like say your unspeakable things, right? Like to say, because sometimes people think those are just like these huge traumas or these huge, like, I don't know, there's some things that we just call unspeakable things. And most of us have lots of like simultaneous losses. Like there's a loss of your dreams or loss of your homes.
Yes.
Or I decided to name this. I don't know if anyone's ever named it, but the other day when I was thinking about grief, I was like, I think there's a loss of synergy is what I called it. So synergy is like 1 + 1 = 3, right?
Yeah.
There's this extra thing. So when you lose a friend or you lose an ex-boyfriend or you lose
you didn't
an
just
animal,
lose that person,
a pet or whatever.
Yes.
Like you didn't just lose that person, you lost the combination of this thing, this loss of synergy. There might be a better name
I
for
love
that.
that.
That's what I'm calling that.
That's a great
loss
way
of synergy.
I think that's
and
great.
I think like we don't talk about that. We don't like what do you do with loss of synergy? We talk about this loss. I lost this dog. I lost this boyfriend. I lost this, but like there's this other, thing, like groups of friends when they move out and they get married or they go to school and like you had this thing and there was this synergy and now like we don't have the combination of, we don't have book club anymore.
No, I love that. I think that's a really powerful thing to name because it's absolutely true. And it's true whether we lost them because they died or because my roommate got married or because
they're moving along,
friendship ended for some reason or we got divorced, like all of the things.
Even by choice or not by choice. Either way, you don't have them or the thing.
Yeah. Or your kids move out and go to college or right. Yeah, absolutely. I think all of those things.
And I guess I just want to say I'm a therapist. I made that up. That's okay.
Yes, it is.
I guess I just want to say, like, I'm sitting here and I'm on this podcast and I'm pretty knowledgeable about grief. And I know there's real names, but those real names, when the term ambiguous loss came about, it was because a woman, she was like, I'm going to name it this and I'm going to write a book and I'm going to talk about it. And now everyone knows.
Now we can call it that.
That we call it that, right? Like, it didn't necessarily exist as a name. So part of me wants to say to listeners and viewers, like, I would like to invite you to, like, name it, whatever you want to name it. But like when you name it or you take it outside of yourself and it's sitting next to you, you can examine it or whatever, like initially, then maybe you can talk to somebody else about it, right? Yeah. Like I think the first step is to be able to even identify it.
Yeah.
The day that I realized that there was a lot more loss in my life than there was death, because I had a lot of simultaneous death loss in my life, I was like, I think I'm having a harder time with this other type of grieving because there isn't a ritual, there isn't a thing, there isn't a who else can I talk to about the loss of a life that I never had,
right?
This partner and these kids that I just never had, and so like
without sounding like I'm whining, without becoming this person that's just like
people leaning in and being like, but you have such a good life,
right?
You had built so many good things,
and
don't
get me started.
You're helping people. You're an instrument in the Lord's hand. I literally said to somebody one time, stop it.
Yes, please.
Knock it off.
Stop it.
I don't want to be an instrument in the Lord's hands for the rest of my life. I don't want to be an instrument my whole life. I want to be me. I want to be in the story. Yes. I want to be like living the thing, right? Yes. Do I want to build a kingdom life? Yes. I've never feared that. I'm like in it to win it. I feel the same responsibility. I say this all the time as a mother of 5 to build the kingdom. I don't think being a single person gives me just like a hang out in life pass. I just don't.
Right.
But doing the things and building the kingdom, and like my purpose cannot be on this life to be an instrument in other people. Like, no. Right? Like, I don't believe in a God that says, Kylie, we're gonna give Courtney a husband and a child and like also all your problems, but like, and we're just going to let you not have that. And you just get to like sort of listen to people and be like, no. Right? Like we don't live in that. I don't believe this,
I don't believe that God either.
Yeah. No, it's like, no, I have circumstances. I have agency. People have agency. Maybe there were some choices I made before I came here. I don't know. Yeah. But like, maybe this is the perfect challenge for me to grow in my like, figuring out how to best in my reachings, I guess. This is the story that helps me to be in my best reachings to God, right? I don't know what it is, but I do think that like it's interesting to like sit in your spaces, right? And I just want to say to people, like, I want to validate.
Oh yeah.
Because maybe there's a part of me as a human that says, I want to validate your grief in wherever you are. And I actually want to ask people to sit down and maybe do this. We talk about meditation all the time, but maybe take an inventory of your grief and your losses. This might sound scary to people. It's very empowering. I feel like
very empowering
to list it out, right? Name it out or whatever.
And find a compassionate place to share your story. And this is something that I've discovered, and it is that I love the idea of grace. And I think we talk about grace in the context of the Savior.
Yes.
And we also talk about grace sometimes as like a quality that people have.
Yeah.
But I think of grace as that place, that compassionate place to tell your story is an opportunity for us to partner with the Savior in offering and receiving grace, because my experience and your experience, and we have some shared experience, like there's synergy in that.
Yes.
And for me, that synergy is called grace, because it's a courteous goodwill that we offer to each other that makes us feel less alone. And sometimes I can feel less alone because I believe in a Savior that's with me, but sometimes it's especially, I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, sometimes, especially the things that feel very feminine, like losing a uterus, or like I had breast cancer, or like going through or being a single woman and not having some of those options available to you. Those, I find it hard to connect to a male God figure, right? Yeah. And so it's easier for me to connect to another woman who has been through a similar experience, where, and for me, there's this really cool opportunity that my pain and your pain, when we bring them together, actually create some healing.
Oh yeah.
Right. And that's like my pain with Christ's pain come together and create some healing. So I find that that's the opportunity. And if I'm willing to sit down and come up with that list, if I'm willing to sit down and go, where do I experience some of that pain?
Where are these pain points? And where are these?
Then I have ability to share it and to receive and give in a relationship with somebody else who may be experiencing something similar.
We're both therapists, so of course we're pro, and go do the work if you need to do the work. But I want to say to people, sometimes people get overwhelmed in the wait list of therapists and the money of therapists and the having to hoard up a whole bunch of small T's or big T traumas before I can go. Yeah. And I want to say there's some healing and some work and some grace to be done, just where you are in your life, where you're at.
Yeah.
Sit yourself by a tree. I'm a big fan of being out in nature, but take your shoes and socks off, put them in the grass, do some grounding, and allow yourself to look around. This is the thing that I think most people, maybe you can speak to this too. There's such a fear for people that are trying to pull their lives and put themselves together. This is the imagery I have, Courtney. Maybe you have a different imagery, that people are so afraid to acknowledge their grief because they're going to fall into a puddle on the floor.
Yes.
There's no boundary. There's no, I will just have to fall apart. I will disappear. I will evaporate into the world. If I possibly look and acknowledge or even stop and take a breath, my whole world will spin out of control because it's finally stuck together by my ignorance or my ignoring.
By my avoidance. Yeah,
right,
for sure.
By all the things I put in my place, all my good friends and all my belonging and all the ways I serve and the ways I receive and the good, it's finally tuned that if I do the thing you just said to me, I might just what would happen? I don't know. I cannot do that emotionally because I will not recover.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. That is so scary because it's vulnerability.
And what's on the other side of that?
Connection. Right. I mean, that's it. And real belonging. That's what's on the other side of it. But it's so scary.
It's it's like taking your armor off and putting your neck out and the other person has the sword and they can either kneel down next to you or they can lop your head off. It's
right.
And by this person, I don't mean, I mean God, I mean yourself, I mean your partner, I mean whoever it is that you're so afraid, I don't even know if the word is fear, so whatever, I'm saying fear because I think that's it, to just be messy and be the blob. I mean, you know this and I know this because we've had 20 years to sit in people's spaces and see this. The other side of this is that when people can't no longer hold it, they really can't. Right. They're not even being vulnerable by choice at this point. They're I have to show up and I have to show you my messy because it's interruptive in my life. Right. Yes. We know because we've been able to witness and see that the other side of that for at least most people is it isn't always the problem solved or the thing is closed. That this isn't it, right? It's that the resilience is built, the connection that's built. Most people don't fall apart. I guess I want to voice this. Most people don't evaporate. They don't turn into a blob on the floor. They don't their life doesn't get unhinged. The crazy thing that I want to say, and you just mostly have to feel it, is that there is some really strong empowerment. There's some really beautiful grace. There's some beautiful strength that comes out of that place. When I picture you in the hospital bed, like missing a part of you and also missing your baby who's over here, and I think of the Courtney that was forged out of that.
Yeah.
Like, what a gift we have to have that Courtney. We didn't have that Courtney before that.
Yeah.
We have this now. What a gift that we have that if you guys go to Courtney's website, Courtney, your little blurb that you have on the bottom, my favorite part of your blurb about you tell about your story is that at the end, and I want you to speak to this, you say, I finally decided to get brave and just do the thing that I wanted to do. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Which is you do grief counseling now, right? You spent the majority of your career in some capacity with teens and parents and adolescents and a lot of residential, right? As an education consultant or a therapist or whatever, right? And you've moved in. And I just love that you say that. Like, you did this work and then you were watching people and I want to hear you say when I read that, and then you were like, hey, the thing that I feel in all this experience and my own experience the gift that I can give that's born out of this is this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I would say is that it was the other. Like, I don't think I was, it wasn't a consolation prize to do the work I did. I was passionate about the work I did. I loved it. I felt really connected to it. And I had moments, I can say too, like when I was working at La Europa, there was a girl that I worked with there, and she had been suicidal and she was in really tough shape. And I felt so strongly it had to be me that got to be her therapist at that time. And if I had been married and had kids, I might not have been her therapist. And I felt like that was a little bit of like, I got to have a glimpse of being a nurturer for somebody who really needed it. And she had wonderful parents.
That timing, right?
But the timing of that was like, this was something that had to be me. I don't know if that's true or not.
Of course it's true.
But God,
what a tender mercy, right?
Feel that, and she felt that, and I felt that, and there was a synergy that was grace, right? Like that in that moment, I got to experience being a nurturer, being a mother to a person who really needed me to be in that role in that moment. So I know that like that part of that was passion for me too.
Yeah.
But then I as time went on and I got married and had this experience and then went through breast cancer treatment that I just kept looking at all these losses and these types of grief. And like you said, people don't name it as grief. And I was like, this is really powerful stuff that's happening. And I really enjoy talking about it and like speaking at a conference or something like that about it. But at the end of the day, I was like, I need the connection again. Like I want to be able to sit in the sacred space with people who are experiencing these losses and be that like safe opportunity for them to share and to go into it. And they are not puddles on the floor. They aren't. Like these people are like, they're bringing that to the table, and I literally have the and sign, and I'm like, we're gonna work on that because I don't want you to be a puddle on the floor. My job, and some therapists I think do, like they're like, I'm gonna break you down until you're a puddle on the floor, and that's how we're gonna get to the bottom of it. I don't believe that. That's not how I've ever approached therapy. I think it's really about helping people to find the strength, to find the and that they can hold in that hand that helps them to endure the thing that they're going through. And sometimes it's not a thing you're going through. It's just your life. Like you're going to be experiencing that thing forever or for as long as you're experiencing it. And so it's not like come and we'll get you through that. It's like come and we'll learn how to hold these things in both of our hands.
And not only hold both, but hopefully eventually be able to like honor and love, and like there's a cherished place for that, right?
Yeah.
The other side for me
love both parts
of grief is that like I sometimes think that grief is just this sad thing we carry forever. Like it's tied around our neck and that we drag it along, right? I can't speak for everybody. I can only speak for me, but I have been so grateful that the griefs and the losses, all the different kinds that I've had in my life at many points in my life, the grace, right? The opportunities that I've had to sort of like the tender mercies or like, I can't sit authentically and as powerfully in places without it, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. As a therapist, there have been times when I was like, oof, I could not feel like I feel with you. Now mine is different than yours, but I know that like from the deep crevices of this, I wouldn't have that
Right.
without these. So, well, I don't want to necessarily say that they're like blessings or gifts. I do think that they are great opportunities and they are connection pools, right? I think I've always, as an empath, like I've always been somebody who's like, I'm attracted to other people who have a deeper well.
Yeah.
Like I always kind of jokingly was like, man, I just don't really want people. I just don't really like and want people who are just sort of having shallow lives.
Yeah.
I don't know how to relate to that.
Yeah.
But when you meet people and they've got deep reservoirs, they've got grief, they've got like, I'm attracted to that.
Me
I think
too.
my soul is attracted to deep wells, right? Like,
Yes.
Maybe because I don't feel so big or so much, or like I'm not overwhelming because like your well is big and deep, and I feel really safe in your presence, your specific presence, but I'm saying in people's presence where they've also had their own resilience and their own trauma. There's no comparison needed. It's like, oh, I feel connected to you, and Rob, I see you. You guys know I'm living wounds. Like, you know it because I've spoken it out now. Other people know, right? And like, you don't see me for those wounds, obviously, but you do see them as a part of me.
Yeah.
You're like, oh,
it's
you hold that.
It's our part of our identity.
Yeah.
Like, that's our story. And if we're willing to like let that actually be part of our story and share it in the safe places and engage in the work of healing, because it is work to do, that if we are willing to do that, then it shows up as part of our identity and it makes us more accessible to people. It makes people drawn to like, you're a safe person because and like I said, I had that gift anyway. I think like that was something that was given to me for like no good reason, just like, but I was willing to use it. Yeah. And so I would say this, like,
I want to say, can I just back up?
Yeah.
For every good reason. I think it's a spiritual gift. You were definitely given, right? And then you decided to open your eyes and honor it and name it and accept it. Because not everybody does that either.
No, yeah.
Right? Like, this is the thing that
I could have been a lawyer.
There's a lot of pride that some people feel that like, I can't say that this is the thing that I'm good at because that's prideful.
Right.
Like 3 times in this podcast, at least, you have just owned it without any apology and without, I just want to stop and say, I love this.
Thank you.
And not enough people do it, right? Like not enough people are like, yeah, this is maybe why I feel sometimes to say when people are talking about talent. I'll never forget one time I was playing the piano at something and someone came up to me, I think it was a churching or something, and someone came, oh, you're just so good. I could never do that. And I literally usually say, oh, thanks. And I literally stopped and I said to the person, I was like, you could if you put in the time. Yeah. And it was so awkward because I'm sure that person was just trying to be nice. It was more for me for them, but I was kind of over this idea that like it just magically happened. I just can play the piano. Right. It's like I worked really hard to be able to do the thing. I do have talent, but like this thing that people, the same thing sometimes comes in grief. People, when my brother died, would say, or people, I don't know, other things that I've talked about, that I could never do what you, being a therapist, I could never do what you do. And I want to say to people, like, you're way stronger. Yeah. You're way more capable. You don't know what you can do until you're given an opportunity to show up, and then, you know, you see who you either inherently had in the gifts that show up, or you see the work you've done before come to light, or you're messy and you figure it out, right? Like this is the thing, is that like looking at, I guess what I want to say, Courtney, is that like there's a world where people could see you as this like powerful speaker, mom, wife, sister, therapist, and boy, would they miss like the totality, the wholeness of you if they didn't know. Yeah. I had this loss and I had this loss, and I waited, and in my waiting I had the most joy, but in my waiting I waited to find my partner, and my partner, it wasn't this easy fix. There was 4 years, and then there was this, and then I had multiple parts of my body that like I had to work through, my feminineness and who am I with it. Like, imagine if all they knew was that other side of you. Like, it's just not who you are. And also, you can't be the speaker you are without that, right? No. Right. But everybody is walking around with these walls, and we see the surface of where people are, right? And we talk about this a lot, like enter the world like everybody's hurting. And part of you wants to say, yes, that's true. And also get more curious. If you think somebody is really powerful and awesome, if someone has a podcast or someone has a thing, like there's probably a cost. Yes. Yeah. For the thing that you're seeing. Yeah. Right?
There always is. And get curious is a huge thing for me. I mean, I am curious and I want to know people's stories. And I think, and not out of just like some kind of voyeuristic, like I want to know people's stories because this line from a hymn came into my brain years ago, and it's sort of like a way I think about myself and my life. And the words are, I would learn the healer's art.
Oof.
And because it's like playing the piano. It's like, it is something you have to learn and develop and practice and get better and better at. And last week we were in gospel doctrine. The teacher was asking, so in class at church, the teacher was asking about spiritual gifts that people had. And the words that came into my brain were to comfort the weary, which is also a line from a song. And I think like, I know that these are the gifts that I've been given, and also that I have put the energy in to develop those things, and that I've been given these opportunities or these experiences. And I don't believe that God messes with us. Like, I don't personally believe that God's up there like, I'm going to give her this problem and I'm going to give her that problem.
Neither do I.
I think the problems happen.
Life happens.
And God knows what we're capable of. So I believe that these things that have happened in my life, like, could have been other things that could have happened in my life. And that what I was going to do with them, because of the gifts that I've been given, is that I was going to figure out how to turn them into comforting the weary. And like, that was going to turn them into, what does that mean for me to learn the healer's art? I have not learned it. Like, it is a lifelong pursuit of learning it. And I learn it because I sit in these spaces with people who are willing to share their stories with me, and their stories impact me and fill up that well too, like become a part of my experience and how I feel like I can show up. And
I love this. Rabbi David Wolpe wrote a book that's one of my favorite lost books called Making Lost Matter. Mm-hmm. And this idea of making lost matter, not that we have to turn it into these good things, but that like they matter, and what you do with that and how you connect. I mean, the whole point of this podcast is this, right? Yeah. Listening to people's stories and helping people to know that like every story matters, and they like enter, I think, at our grief points, at our pain points, at our vulnerability points, right? They like intertwine and they're like necessary. Yeah. I have a couple questions.
Okay.
I think it'd be remiss if I didn't sit in front of you and say, hey, you've been a therapist for a long time. And this is a big question, Courtney, so go wherever you want to go. What are maybe one or two things that you are like, that you've learned as you sat over and over and over and over and over and over with people?
I mean, the biggest thing is that everybody has a story, and that everybody has some kind of suffering, and that we don't suffer the same way. And so like, just because I understand what my suffering feels like, or I have heard about it from somebody else, that doesn't mean that I understand the next person that walks in my office, unless I make myself curious and try to understand what it feels like to them. And so I don't assume that I know anything. When somebody walks in,
tabula rasa, right? Blank slate.
Yeah. You're an expert in your own life and your own experience. And if I can shed some light on that because of things that I've learned and know, then great. But for me, it's about that curiosity and trying to understand what it feels like to you and not judge it. So, and that would be, I would say, like, that's a second thing. And it's a big piece of dialect. So the idea of a dialect of like holding two seemingly contradictory emotions at the same time fits into this kind of part of therapy called dialectical behavior therapy, that looks at the idea of like, one of the things we do the most is we judge our emotion. And so that causes us a lot of problems because instead of just like, okay, it's bad enough that I'm experiencing anxiety or sadness or fear or anger or whatever it is, but now I'm judging it. I'm on top of it. And I'm saying what it should feel like. And I should feel grateful. And all of that judgment gets in the way.
It should be more put together.
Yes. Or like, I should be over this by now. Or like, this isn't that big of a deal.
I've already done
comparing
therapy.
myself to somebody else who's having a harder trauma than I am. When I was first diagnosed with breast cancer, literally like 5 days later, my cousin's child was run over by a truck and died. And it was horrible. And I was like, cancer. Like, that's nothing, like this little breast cancer diagnosis, which I'm still trying to figure out what it is like nothing compared to what these people are going through right now. And we do that. And
pain is relative, right?
Pain,
it's not.
Yes. And it's true. Like, by the way, it's true. That was worse. That was worse in that moment. And what I was going through was still important and relevant and had impact and and so I think that's part of it, is like trying to help people get into a space where I can have some relativism, where I can like be able to say, okay, in the big scheme of things, like I'm going to get through this thing that I'm going through right now. And also, like, it's really hard right now, and it gets to be really hard right now. And you don't have to compare it to what somebody else is going through, unless that actually helps you. Yeah. Most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time it just gives us a reason to beat ourselves up.
Right.
So I mean, like, there's a lot of things, but
yeah, let me ask a follow-up question.
Mind. Yeah.
We both spent a big part of our career working with teens and families. I'm currently actually working with youth who have experienced sexual abuse or sexual exploitation. So we're like in a dark waters, right? Heavy stuff. Yeah. And so, and even if it wasn't in that like residential, right, wilderness, like we have been given the opportunity to sit with people in their worst moments, when I use the analogy a lot about, like, you know, someone jumps into or falls into the water and they're drowning, and like we're helping families to not jump in the water with them, but we're helping them to figure out how to like throw the life preserver and help their kid like kick back to shore. And also, like, what do you do? And this is what I feel like therapy is, right? Family therapy is like helping people in crisis. So the question I want to ask you is, you have a lot of evidence in front of you, and I want to ask you, because a lot of people just think like, can I even do does it even make sense? We're so broken. We haven't had digital like boundaries, and now we need to have them, or we lost our kids from our life. We like, okay, my kid was abused, and like, and we weren't there to, like, there's a million stories, right, that I could tell you, and you've had so many in front of you. So the question I want to ask you is, can people heal? Can people change? Is there like hope?
I believe in hope. I'm a hopeful person. I think people can change. I do. I've seen people change. I think people can heal. And I think that it's like, we have to be careful about what the expectations are for what that's going to look like, because it's not, I have a broken arm and I go to the doctor and they put a cast on it, and 6 weeks later it's like new again.
It's not an outcome. It's a process,
it's
right?
Not. And there's gonna be a lot of ups and downs in that process. And I would say, you know, the biggest benefits that I see people gain from therapy are, like, one, they can learn some things about themselves that can help them in the decisions that they're making as they go forward, that can help them build some resilience and some ability to see the world a little bit differently, which can help them really improve their circumstances and their mindset. So I see that happen. I think that when people are dealing with like severe mental illness, when you're dealing with severe depression, severe anxiety, like, you're probably not going to be cured from it with therapy. It's going to be something that you're going to deal with. And so if therapy can help you learn how to deal with it a little bit better and feel a little bit more confident in your ability to manage your day-to-day life, then like that happens.
Or name it, or speak it, or tell other people about it.
Yes. And I see that. And the other thing that happens is that if you find the right person, and there's a lot of importance in finding the right person, it's not always going to be the first person that you talk to.
Hardly ever.
Yeah. That when you find that, then you get that space, that compassionate space to tell your story and feel someone connect to you over it, that there is healing in that moment, in that feeling of being seen. And we need to be seen by the people that are close to us, and not by somebody that we're paying to talk about this stuff. But feeling seen by that person can help us feel like it's possible to be seen by other people too, and to be loved in our story, not in spite of our story. And so I think that is a really, really important kind of outcome that happens with therapy
test
too.
Your, like, I talk a little bit sometimes about vulnerability being these like antennas, or like a turtle that comes out of its shell, right? A good place to maybe test that is somebody who can hold that space, and they can. Yeah. They're not going to react in any crazy way. They don't have your background or any. Right. And like a good place to try it out, right? Yeah. And be like, oh, I didn't combust, right, by telling you this worst thing that has ever happened to me in my life, or by telling you I have a porn addiction, or by telling you that I, like, oh, you just sat and you were like, okay, and
Yeah.
How does that impact you? Or whatever the questions they ask, right?
Yeah. And when you're dealing with sex abuse and exploitation, this is going to be part of your story your whole life. It's going to be part of your story. And how is it going to fit into your story? Like, a therapist can help you figure that out. It doesn't mean because it might be something that is like that you wear on your sleeve, that you're working with Elizabeth Smart, who's a person who went through that and who is like out there as like, this is part of who I am and I'm using it to help other people. Or you might hold it really close and you might only share it with the people that you really want to get that close to share something like that with. And there's no right or wrong about that, but a therapist can help you figure out what's the right way for you. Like what's going to help you make meaning of this hard experience that you've had. Is it getting out there and connecting with other people who've had a similar experience? Or is it like working through it and then putting it over here as part of like, this is part of who I am, but it's not a part that I share with everybody.
Yeah.
And that gets to be an okay outcome as well.
Sometimes I talk about grief, like the impact being like this hand, like over your face. Right. And then, or the experience. And then over time from whatever, it's like this, right?
Yeah.
Like it's still here, it's in your periphery, but it's not like right up. And the thing that I love that you said that I want to pull back and say is that like in therapy, and the reason why I wanted to ask you is because you have lots of years, like, that you can say with authority with people. Yeah. Like, is every family and every kid, do they feel like maybe they like successfully? No, this is not what we're going for though, right? We're going for, some people need to get skills and some people need to get like name the thing. Some people just need to be normalized and validated. And in and of itself, that is enough, right?
Yeah. Some people can get that from other people in their life.
That's what I'm saying.
But I think, like you said, like we all think we're a little bit better at it than we are in the real world. And therapists are trained to be able to do it. It's hard to show up with people that we love and to not like make it about ourselves or to not try to connect by telling a story that we know about somebody else who had that same thing happen. And we're trained to like stop that part of our brain and just listen and hear it. And that doesn't mean we're not going to share or we're not going to help them connect to something else.
Or they're not going to feel the empath, that thing, like the gift that you have, right? Like,
but that's our
just
job.
Like anybody else, you go to your hair done with somebody who knows how to do hair, right? If you want to go sit with somebody who really knows how to help you sit in a safe space, go to somebody who's that's what they do every day, all the time, right? And I'm a therapist, and I'm not even saying that everyone needs therapy. I'm just saying for the people who know they need it, there's sometimes this fear of like, is the money, is the time? You said something, we have a name for it. We call it therapeutic alliance, but that therapeutic alliance, they say, is 80% of the healing. It's so high.
It's so high.
10% of like your skills.
Yeah.
And like nowadays there's such an opportunity for therapists to be skilled in so many things, right? And there's ever changing things that are like, as we learn about the brain more and neuroscience.
Right.
This gives me some comfort too. It's like, I don't need to know all the things. Like my space that I show up as a therapist, my gift, my empathy, my whatever, it's not for everybody, but for who it is, that therapeutic alliance is more than my skill set. More the other 10%, if you guys are curious, is like what's happening in the world around you impacts therapy. So 80% therapeutic alliance, 10% skill, 10% what's going on. This 80% is so important, right? That part of the healing journey is this. The connection, to be seen, to be heard, and to know that you matter. Yes, you do need to get that somewhere else, but if you can find the right person to sort of try it out on, right, and be successful, then you have a little less fear of like doing it with somebody else, right? I think therapy a lot of times is like practice.
Yes. Totally. It's practice vulnerability, right?
Like, or accidental vulnerability or purposeful.
Like I can purposely do it in a place where like they can't go tell anybody else about it.
Yeah.
And
nobody even needs to know. I always tell people like, we live in a world where we're saying mental health is fine and the stigma is a lot lower. But I was like, ain't nobody's business if you're going to therapy. You don't have to tell anybody. Just like you can do it in secret if you want.
Yeah.
Go practice and go do it in secret. And then if you're trying to figure out how to do it with other people, then you can do it there. Okay, I have one last question for you. Okay. Well, two. The second to last one is, Courtney, if we were to take away all the things, like all your accolades, all the things that are attached to you or that belong to you or the names, if we were to strip all that away, like how would you describe you? Who are you?
I mean, I think like I was a daughter first, the daughter of God, daughter of my parents. I'm a sister. I'm a friend. like in order. These are the things that I felt like most connected to being as like who I was. And I'm a wife and I'm a mother. And I'm a person who desires to comfort the weary and to partner in grace with the Savior in showing up for people. And
it's powerful.
And I feel healed and supported by that work too.
Yeah, I love that. I'm just like ringing true to this healer's heart. That's such a encompassing like name, I guess, for the journey.
Yeah, right.
That I feel like I've been on.
Yeah.
Like it's like powerful. Thank you for that.
You
like
are. Yeah.
That's gonna ring in my soul, I think, for a long time. Like I always ask my guests, you've kind of spoken to it in bits and pieces, but I wonder if there's anything specific that you want to share about the power of like belonging and connection and like, or where it shows up or has shown up in your life, or anything left on the table that you're like, man, I feel really called to talk about this. Yeah. And you can,
I do have like this one note that I wrote down from Daring Greatly.
Yes.
Brene Brown said, if we want to fully experience love and belonging, we must believe that we are worthy of love and belonging. So I think that's the last piece that I would add to it is, and that feeling worthy of love and belonging means feeling like who I am is worth seeing and worth connecting to. And that's really hard sometimes because we feel defined by so many different parts of who we are, and that can create space between us and others, or space between us and God. And I think like for me as a human, it starts with feeling worthiness before God, like feeling that there is a powerful being, and I would say beings like heavenly parents for me that see me for everything. Like they know it all and they are crazy about me. That's a phrase my husband uses, and I love it because it's this, like, we can picture that. We can imagine what that feels like. And so I think it starts with believing that, and I genuinely deeply believe that about myself and about every single human being that I come in contact with, that they are loved by divine beings who are their parents. And I think it's, so for me personally, it starts there. It doesn't start there for everybody. But I think we have to find that part that says you're worthy of this.
You're enough.
You're enough. Just
as
you are, like
worthy. Yeah.
Strip away all the stuff, like you say, and like what's left is enough, and who you are and is enough and is worth seeing and connecting to. And I think that's,
everything else is dressing, right? They might be pretty dressing, but it's just like who you are at your soul is more than enough, right?
Yes.
It's just,
which is why we see so many people who seem to have everything and who seem to be like have it all together and who have all the things that we would make a list and say like these are the things that you want, and who are lonely and who are sad and who feel like disconnected. And our world is all about connection, and the majority of it is counterfeit. It doesn't lead to real sense of connection and belonging. And so we really have to fight for it. Like we really have to go looking for those relationships that are going to provide the real thing and not the like superficial part of it that exists in a lot of the types of connection that we have these days. And I think that like false connection existed before social media, but it's certainly in our faces a lot.
And it's so, especially the younger generation, it's sort of, we can see because we have a peer into like what the world that was before that. And we know what it feels and tasted like to run around the neighborhood and like
right.
To not be attached and not to have such a fear as parents do now that like if my kid doesn't have a phone, I'm fearing for their safety. Like I don't know that they're any more or less safe. I'm not going to speak to that, but there was more of a community because nobody had phones to do that anyway, that like I'm my brother's keeper. The neighbor was watching the kid and the peeing was watching, and like we're all kind of like, yeah, if there's something going wrong, I'm going to tell you. There's such an isolation with the counterfeit connection. We're not really out and connecting. We're like connecting, right? So that that is, that whole thing is that's a whole nother subject that's like really
I know, right?
powerful. But I want to like ask you, because of what you just said, Courtney, what does it mean to you to be known?
I mean, I think it requires vulnerability, because for me, it's about like somebody has to really know that, to know my weakness. There's something about that, like that so like my husband, he knows all of it. Like he's seen all the hard things. Like I've said the stupid stuff, and I've done and I've made mistakes, and I've hurt him, and he's
seen your body.
He's seen all the parts of my body, including like really like going through these things where there are parts of me that have been taken off, literally, like parts of my feminine self that are gone. And so seeing experiencing all of that, and there's not a question in my mind at all about whether he adores me. Like
he's in love with your soul.
Absolutely. And
I'm sure he loves all the dressings too.
All the other things too. Like but he and I think like I struggled so much like for such a long time, feeling like, well, I need people to know that I'm smart. Like if you don't know I'm smart, then you don't really know me. And it's like, he doesn't care. Like he's not making a list of all my qualities. He's just like, you're at my core. Like he knows me.
But if he was, his list would be like, she's compassionate.
Yeah.
She gives grace.
Yeah.
She's a good friend. I mean,
yes.
I would imagine
he would say I'm smart because he knows it's important to me.
Yeah.
For him to say that.
But I'm saying his list is not like the list that we put in our heads.
No. I think that's part of what it feels like to be seen. I think that I have been blessed in my life to be seen by a lot of people. It's not just this one person. Like I'm grateful that I found somebody after all that waiting that actually sees me, and not everybody gets that in their marriage. Some people have to really fight for it, and so it's a blessing wherever we find it. I think that connection, that where you feel like you know me, and you love me, and not in spite of my weaknesses, but in and through and with my weaknesses. Like they're part of what make me.
Yeah.
That's part of those things are part of who I am. And you love that
say,
too.
Those are not coincidences. So I want to back out I kind of zoom out a lot in this podcast. I guess I want to help people understand that like we create and we invite the belonging that shows up for us. Like we are active participants in that, right? You have said many times in this podcast, and I believe you because I know some of these people around you, right? That you have had this mentor and you've had this and this and this. And I want to say, Courtney, like I feel really strongly like, and you can validate or not validate, that a big part of that is because of how you interact with those people and in the world, right? Mm-hmm. Like, yes, like we're attracted, likeness attracts light, or light attracts light, right? So, like, is it Jules that you said that the book group? Who's the girl?
Becky.
Okay, so I want to bring us around to Becky. Like, we need more Beckys.
Yeah.
Like, right? Like, part of what I want to invite people to do is have these conversations that you and I are having, and that we kind of in our circle of friends have all the time. Maybe because we're therapists, maybe because we just love to hear people's stories and we're curious, but not everybody does. I think there's something weird or strange sometimes for people to just like sit down and have real, like we have to have a book club, or we have to have a game night, or we have to like sort of do this other thing and then we talk. The amount of times I've gone to a game night where we play no games is like, I'm realizing in my older life of like, oh, we don't really want to play games. We just call it a game night so people can function around a thing so that we can just sit and talk, right?
Right.
Because what are we going to say? We're just going to have deep talk night?
Right. It's a dinner.
Deep talk night.
A dinner party.
Yeah.
It's a dinner.
I guess I want to say like be a Becky, like decide that you want to cultivate a place that growth and vulnerability is going to be, because like how else do we grow? How else do we mirror? How else do we validate? How else? I mean, we have a lot of this organic, but like I want to foster a place where people are like deciding to do it intentionally.
They love it.
Like they're building these wells, right?
Yeah.
Like
Dare Greatly, like that's the name of the book, right? It's like it means that you put yourself out there and you actually and you have to like be willing to go for it, and it's risk. And that's what vulnerability feels like, is it feels like risk. There's one other thing she said. Brene says, sink into the joyful moments in our lives, even though we know they're fleeting. And this is one of the things that we really struggle with, right? Is like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. And so I'm not going to let myself feel a lot of joy, and I'm not going to let myself feel all the pain. So I'm going to live in this middle place because the middle place feels the safest. And the reality is I can sink into the joy of like a new baby, even though I know that like the baby's going to grow up. And even though I know that bad things can happen, like I can sink into that joy. And we find people to connect with that want to sink into joy with us, and that are also willing to sink into pain with us.
Into the depths of that, right?
Sink into both of those places. Like that's where connection and belonging are found. And absolutely, I wish there were more Beckys. And she's still a friend too. And she still lives in DC, and she still does this. Like she still makes space for people.
Thank you, Becky.
and tries to get people to connect and have these kinds of conversations. And I'm so like forever changed because she called me up and said, yeah. And like we became friends probably partly because of music and because of my cousin's music. And so like he's interwoven and all over my story too. And
there's a whole other podcast where we talk about music, right?
Yeah.
Like passionately. I want to say to you, like, I want to say that I love you deeply, that like from the time that I first met you, like there was a very spirit about you there was a well, right? Mm-hmm. And that well just has gotten deeper and deeper over time. My respect for you, but like my love. And I've always felt really seen and by both you and Rob, but I'm grateful for people who like you who have decided to dare greatly, since we're using that, to just like live your life kind of inside out. You've kind of decided to just like show the hardest parts of you, and like not just because like not perfunctorily, right, or performatively, but like as a very authentic, like as an invitation, as a permission giving, the story that I told you originally that like really like opened my heart and soul. I'm grateful for you. Oh. So, and I'm grateful what you give.
I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful that you're doing this, that you're just like, you put yourself out there, you're doing the thing like that. People think about this stuff, and I think you're actually doing it, and you're creating a space where people can come together and talk about like, how do we find this place to belong? Yeah. And it's such an important question that we're all seeking, and no matter how much of it we have, like we're still looking for and trying to understand it. And I appreciate what you're doing. And
I think you get this more than the average person, that like, I want to capture people and their stories. We don't get people forever. Yeah. And we don't know how long we get them. Right. Yeah. And I have a like ferocious desire to like sit with my friends and capture their stories and capture their, the importance of just who they are when we strip it all down. And like, other people can hear and other people can like learn from the growth, but there's something to be said about like capturing people's stories. Right. Like I think, and kind of wrapping it up with this theme that I feel from you about grief is that like, we kind of need to live like we're dying. We kind of need to live like we're temporary, but we also need to sink into like all the moments, right? There's something to be said about really honoring that we don't have control of the people and things around us. And because we don't, man, the way we interact with people should be like fiercely and deeply and vulnerably, and tell them what they mean to you and why they're important to you, not just that you love them. And don't stop telling them that, right? 10 years later, still tell them, still send the text, still say like, hey, this matters to me. Say the things that you think in your head, like I think a lot of people regret the things they didn't say, but you're never going to regret saying. Yeah. Or writing the note or doing the thing or showing up or having a silly idea or inviting people to the thing, or like, these are the things that I think, get brave, get vulnerable, get out there, get connected.
Well, and you practice what you preach, because you do that. And I've experienced that. I've been on the other side of that from you a lot. And I'm so grateful for it.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, tell us where we can find you. We're going to put it in the notes too, but like, you have a website. Yeah.
I have a website, griefmatterscounseling.com. And I'm doing therapy, and I love speaking and things like that too. And the goal is to write a book, and I'm feeling motivated right now to like actually get that going. So,
if people want to hire you for speaking, is that also on the website?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. You can contact me through my website.
And we'll put all this information below. So excited to like one of the gifts that we have in our both careers and our lives is just keep bumping into each other.
I know.
We get to show up. So I'm looking forward to that.
Me too.
I'm hoping one of these days we can do it together, right?
Let's do that.
Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you.